This buddy of mine, he's been on the podcast. He trains with Nate Murdoch in Bentonville, right?
Yeah.
Or Fayetteville. But he's just like made this post like talking so much shit about the new Walker Texas Ranger they came out. He's like Cordell Walker is this, and like just going off. And I was like, bro, are you saying that we should do a Walker Texas Ranger podcast?
It sounds to me like we have to do this.
All right. And I can turn our headphone amps down a little bit. We got to figure out how to use these mic stands, dude. Joe Rogan's got the same. I know. I was having kind of that issue, too. I think you have to maybe pull it further away. Is it staying? Let's see. That's probably the culprit. The one down there. Yeah, there we go.
How's that? Hear me now?
We're official, dude. You're the first one.
I like it. I like being the first. Nice.
All right. You're pulling young Jamie duties on anything
yeah.
we don't have in our combined 30 pages of notes.
Yeah, no joke. I got a few things pulled up, so I got some stuff I bookmarked just for this.
Yeah. Dude, I'm glad you're back on. Thanks for coming
excited.
back. Headphone volume good for you?
Oh, yeah. I can hear.
Okay,
good.
cool. So Will Walker, not the pharmacist. There's another guy that comes
Wish I got paid like the pharmacist, but I don't, so.
Also, but you guys are in a similar
medical field, same name.
Yeah, but there's a guy that comes to the gym, great dude. He's been on the podcast, Will Walker the pharmacist. So I'm like, I refer to you guys, I'm like, Will Walker the fighter,
yeah.
Will Walker the pharmacist.
That's right.
So,
You got to separate.
I guess he's technically a fighter too, but
yeah,
but not like a pro fighter like yourself.
Semi-pro.
Yeah, man. I was thinking about you recently anyway, just because I know we talked a little bit about your background last time, but I've been going on I do every so often a big JKD rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Like real quick sidebar on that, because I want to talk to some people. Like I've only really talked to people from the NSANO side.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm curious about the differences in schools of thought. Like because I've heard loosely that some people were like, fuck that Filipino martial arts.
Yeah.
You know, like just in a nutshell. But I don't know if that's true or not. I hadn't really.
It's it's kind of like the concepts guys versus the Ted Wong guys. Kind of is where we go into, and that's where I come from, is the Ted Wong side. I'm on that half of the spectrum. So, yeah, but like Rodney and Zane, those guys have kind of experienced both sides. So those guys kind of have the inside knowledge on both of the different versions of it. Because I'm pretty sure Rodney started with Dan Inosanto. I'm pretty sure that's where he first started doing JKD with him. I had a couple seminars, and then he kind of segued into a Ted Wong.
Like I was bringing this up to somebody the other day, and this is just my observation, right, as someone who researches.
Yeah.
So I have a ton of Dan Inosanto shit, like the 5-volume video set, the 9-volume video set, the Filipino martial arts video set, like from 80s, 90s, 2000. And I was watching this Chai seminar. Are you familiar with Chai Sirisuit?
Uh-uh.
He's the Muay Thai guy that they've all been hanging out with since, like, the dude got to America practically.
Yeah.
He came here in the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken. But I saw him, I have a login to their website right now. Like Greg Nelson is, like a product of that. Like all their Thai boxing comes from this dude. And Caleb trained with him. And like McFan, who's a JKD guy. And I was like watching this Chai seminar from 1990. It was like 4 hours long. And like in the beginning, they're doing like their traditional like.
Yeah, katas and stuff.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. But he showed this like kicking counter series. And then I saw this Dan Inosanto tape from like 2000 saying like this is JKD kickboxing. And he showed those same 5 techniques in that same order. And I was like, I'm going to say you saw that from Chai.
Yeah,
and
I think I've seen this before.
And you're calling it JKD. Or maybe Chai learned that series from you.
Yeah.
But it's like, it was like, I wonder about stuff like that. Like when I come across it, and I've got into like Paul Vunak a lot and had a couple of his guys on, and I hit him up to come on the podcast, and he said he would do it.
That'd be good. That'd be cool.
But then he was like, "Hit up my guy about when," and his guys never.
Your people talk to my people.
His people have not messaged me back.
Yeah.
But man, I just am so interested in JKD. It is the concept and the techniques and how they put it together and how they drill. But also, I've ran into some things like that, and I'm like,
it's for me, it's crazy because for me, I started in JKD like day one. That's what I started doing with Rodney. Whereas Rodney had has a background in so many other martial arts before he even came to JKD. So for him, it's like I said, he's the expert. If I have any questions about anything, he's the guy I go to because he's the most experienced guy that I know. And then Zane's the same way. Zane's been doing it for a long time with Rodney as well. So, but yeah, like I said, Rodney's the one that's had the most exposure, I guess, to the world of JKD and how strange it is. Such a strange,
I need to
such
hit
a
both
strange
those
place.
dudes
Yeah,
to come on, even
sure.
if they want to zoom in.
Yeah,
because it's just there's so few people in Arkansas that do it, and like I can't even. Like, there are no Paul Vunak guys around. I mean, I feel like everybody knows everybody around here pretty much. But it's like, when I think of JKD guys, there's McFan and there's Rodney. And any guys that have been, like Chris Arcana at Bentonville, spent years with McFan.
Yeah.
Like, when he was, like, when you were probably the age you were getting in with.
Probably, yeah, that 09, 2010,
Yeah. Anyway, well, Ultimate Fighter. That's speaking of back then.
Yeah, back in the day.
So I would say, like, I was super interested because, the first season came out when I was in 11th grade, and I had not started training martial arts yet. But when I was getting into training, it was the last season we'll talk about today, season 3, right? And that was the one. Like, I remember vividly. My parents had just moved to the house they live in now, but it's like away from my childhood home, and I was going to Tech, and I was watching season 3 at their house, and it was like the day the finale was coming on, and they were like showing the episodes all day.
Oh, like a marathon?
I got like hooked into it, and I'm like, man, this blue-haired guy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Josh Haynes.
Yeah, I know. And I just never forgot that, and that's the same year I started training. And, but then, like, at that era, like, when everybody I talked to about martial arts on this, like, from other, like, the generation of guys we learned from, it's like, well, Hoist Gracie.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the same story from everybody, like, well, and, UFC 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for us, I feel like it was Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bond.
Yeah, for sure, for us, because it was the turning point, really. It was the turning point from what the UFC was to what it is now. And that's why I thought it would be cool to kind of go back and look at it, because that's when things really, like, I did a lot of background, like, pre-Zuffa, like right before Zuffa bought it, and then when Zuffa had it, before the Ultimate Fighter came, because a lot of people don't realize, but before the Ultimate Fighter, Zuffa was going under. They were like $34 million in the hole on the UFC. Like, I think they bought it for $2 million in 2001, and then by the time it got to 2005, which is the Ultimate Fighter started January of 2005, they were like $34 million in the hole. And they were, on the verge of basically just getting out. Like, this is not going to work. We're just going to be done. And that was that 2004, 2005 was the big boom for reality TV. That's when reality TV really started to take off. And they were like, hey, man, we can try to, kind of, nobody would put them on the TV. That was the big deal. They couldn't get on TV anywhere.
Human cockfighting.
Exactly,
okay.
Yeah. So they couldn't get on TV anywhere, so they come up with this idea like, hey, we'll just do this reality TV show, and we'll just kind of snake the fighting in there on them and not really, just kind of backdoor our way into this thing, and that's really where the Ultimate Fighter came from.
Well, I will say, like, for that perception, like, I joke around about the John McCain comment, but there was this weird, even when I was a kid, I had a weird association that cage fighting was like them putting a cage down over a pro wrestling ring.
It just comes out of the ceiling.
Yeah, like that was all I was working off of, because I watched like WCW and stuff when I was a kid, and I was like, yeah, this is what we're talking about right here, But when I was hearing about this stuff when I was a kid, I was seeing pro wrestling and just automatically assuming I didn't really know about Hoist Gracie or any of that stuff.
See, that's where I'm lucky, because my dad was a fighter. So in 96, 97, I'm 8 years old, and we're watching UFCs on VHS. We're watching Pride when it comes out, So for me, even the first Ultimate Fighter, I think I was 15, maybe when the first Ultimate Fighter come out. But at this point, I'd already been watching UFCs and Pride fighting for a long time. So to me, I was like, this is amazing. I can finally watch it on TV. I don't have to wait for it to come out on a VHS or, buy a pay-per-view. I can just sit on the TV and watch it every week. It was amazing to me.
Yeah. I remember, like, right across from here, maybe we'll go eat some Mexican food over across the street or something. There was a movie gallery. You remember movie galleries?
Oh, yeah.
And I actually worked at one point. But, like, this was, like, right around all the same time. And I went in there. They were, like, closing or something. Or they had this huge sale. And I bought all of these UFCs, like, the bunch of the early ones. And then, like, all the 40s and 50s. And, like the Hoist Gracie, Matt Hughes one. Like, some of the earliest ones. But it was, like, right from, like, I was doing some background on the seasons. It was, like, UFC 56, I think, was one of the finale.
Couture Liddell, the two Couture Liddell 2 or whatever.
That was like in that bunch. Yeah. Like, I need to bring him down here. I've got them all in a case, like a DVD case, at my house. But man, that I remember that was like a cache. I remember working through those at my old apartment. I'm like 22 years old. I'm like, I gotta watch all
one after another, just marathon watching them. Yeah.
But man, it is a cool idea. I love doing stuff like this, and I like how we decided to. Because, how many seasons is there now? Almost 30.
I think they're like the 30. Yeah, like 30.
They are on 30.
I think 30s. Maybe. Yeah, I think 30s were the ones about to start, or the next one coming up.
What are some other ones you're excited about?
Season 5, Nate Diaz. Season 5 is a good one. It's one of my favorites. Okay. What else? The season
10 and 13 for me.
12 is a big one for me. GSP and Josh Koscheck's a big one. Yeah. What else? What's the one with Forrest Griffin and Rampage? The one they coach against each other. That's a big one too. I think that's like 7 or 8. It's a good one. I think it's 7 because I think 8's Nogueira and Mir. But
that was such an interesting time. I had a comment about that in my notes. It's such an interesting time and group of light heavyweights. Like when it was Jardine and Hamill and Griffin and Jon Jones on the come up, and it was. Rashad knocking Chuck Liddell out. That
was like the heyday of the light heavyweight division at that point. I feel like at the point when Ultimate Fighter started, it was Couture and Liddell and Hughes, and that was it. Like, that was the whole UFC. Everything was built off their back. Like, that was all they had. Yeah. And then by the time season 2 rolled around, then you see Franklin starts to kind of come into the picture. I think he had just won the middleweight title, so he kind of comes in and does his thing, and then season 3, by now, Dana and Tito have kind of got over their little feud. So now Tito's back in the mix, and then Ken's on his little comeback tour or whatever. So,
yeah. Which it's interesting. I went through each fighter that was like that were notable standouts to me, that were like people I had followed and like just looked at their records and looked at who they had fought. But it was interesting to see how some people had went in and out that had made comebacks. Or like, for some reason, Ed Herman. Still fighting the UFC today.
Yeah, still there today.
But he, like, right in the middle of a couple of losses, he had a fight in, like, Strike Force or some shit. And I was like...
that was when they did that crossover thing. Remember they were doing the crossover stuff between the UFC and Strike Force?
They did do some of that.
That was... He got sent over there as a crossover fight, I
remember that.
Yeah. Do you remember... Was it right before? I think it was right before the Ultimate Fighter started when they sent Liddell to Pride to fight in that fight in that middleweight. They called it a middleweight tournament. It was the 199 pounds or whatever. They sent him over there to fight Overeem and Rampage. I think that was right here because I think it was right after he lost to Couture for the belt.
I love how all of that stuff is on Fight Pass now.
Oh yeah, it's all tied together now.
That's the great part about all this. So let's get going with season 1.
All right. So basically, the whole story with season 1 is, like I talked about before, they were trying to get any way on TV they could. So they come up with this idea to make this reality show to kind of buy into like I said, reality TV was a big thing. You had Survivor and Big Brother and all these other big time reality TV shows coming out. So that was their avenue. They're like, we'll use this reality TV avenue to get ourselves on TV. Because the thing about it is the whole reason they had the UFC was because Dana was managing Tito and Chuck Liddell at the time, what's a big deal. And he was negotiating their contracts with the guy that owned the UFC before Zuffa came along. And in the middle of them talking, he said, you know what? I don't even know if we have enough money to do another show. And he hung up on Dana. And so Dana was like, whoa, they must really be in financial trouble. So immediately he calls Fertitta. And he's like, hey, we should make a play right now and buy this thing because they're hurting for money and we can get it on the cheap. So they end up buying it, sink $30-something million into it to try to kind of reverse the stigma of what it was, try to put in the weight classes, the time limits, the rules, all that stuff in an effort to get sanctioned, get on TV, do all this stuff. Nothing was working. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to touch it. So they come up with a reality TV show. They pitch it to all these major networks. None of them will do it. They refuse. They're like, no, we don't want no part of that. So then they come up to Spike TV, this is the same time that Spike TV's coming on, and they're a little more edgy content. They're a little bit more, they had like some weird shows on Spike TV because that's just what they were into. They're like, we want something that's a little off the wall that we can market. And even they didn't want the Ultimate Fighter. They said, no, we don't want to pass on it either. So Fertitta and Dana said, well, we'll cover the production costs. We'll pay all the production costs if you'll just put it on TV. $10 million. $10 million worth of production costs. And so Spike TV said, deal. You pay all the production costs, so we have no risk in it, and we'll put you on. And so that's how they got on.
Wow. Yeah, nice background research.
It's crazy wheel deal. And one of the cool things about it was, which I think was super smart on their part, is they put it on Spike TV directly after WWE Raw. So as Raw's going off, Ultimate Fighter's coming on. So you're kind of pulling in some of that fringe audience from, like you said, there's a lot of association between UFC and pro wrestling at that time.
They did play off.
So they kind of pulled some of those guys in with this show. Like, oh, what's this? Like as my show's going off, it's coming on. So I think that was a pretty smart play to kind of help pull some of those ratings into.
For sure. Yeah, that's some interesting. So what year did Zuffa acquire? 04?
Zuffa purchased the UFC in 01.
01. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And between 01 and 04, they
were losing their
on
butts.
A full turnaround. They did a full 180. Like I said, that's when the rules changed. They brought John McCarthy in to kind of set up this unified set of rules. They brought in weight classes and time limits and all this stuff.
Have you seen Big John talk about how the 12-6? I'm pretty sure it was him. I saw it on Joe Rogan's podcast, but how the 12-6 elbow became illegal
from the ice breaking demonstrations.
People break ice blocks with their elbows. We can't have that.
It's illegal. It's so deadly.
Oh man, but shit. Like what was it? Travis Brown. He got a couple of guys, I think, with that elbow.
He got Barnett. I'm pretty sure that's how he got Barnett too.
Yeah,
he got some gut. Yeah, there's some deadly ones, man. And that's one of those, what's 12-6? What's not 12-6? So how much do I have to move my arm for you to not call this illegal?
Yeah.
We'll get into that in one of those seasons. Ultimate Fighter 2. Way later, though. It's like 16, 17. There's a big controversy over a 12-6 elbow in one of the Ultimate Fighter seasons.
How many seasons have you watched so far?
I've watched every single season at least once. Actually, probably watched every season twice.
On this, going back through.
I went through all these 3 first, and then I stopped myself. I was going to go on, but I was like, no, I'm stop. I don't want to get too much in my own head.
Yeah.
But I've probably seen season 1 15 times, probably.
I've seen it a few times, man. Because when I watched it a couple years ago, I think when I had first signed up for Fight Pass, because they're all on there.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
It is. I mean, and then I had it from when people across the street were going out of business. I had bought the DVD set.
Oh, for the first one?
Like the first couple of
That's
seasons.
cool because they have the behind-the-scenes stuff on. There's some cool stuff on there. Yeah. One of the, I think it's Ultimate Fighter 5 special edition set or whatever. You can see like where Joe Lozon and his brother get into a fight at a family barbecue or something. It's like one of his tryout video information. Wow. Him and his brother Dan, they get into a fight at like a family barbecue and their family records it.
Wow. Yeah. Joe Lozon, that dude was amazing.
He's a
submission grappler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So, get into this?
Yeah. Keep going, man.
So we got, basically they bring in 16 guys from all the spectrum. Like they had a couple guys from Randy's team, Team Quest, which was kind of one of the premier teams at the time. So they brought in Levin and Nate Quarry, both were teammates from Team Quest. They came in. But there was just the mix of guys on the first season was pretty wild. Diego Sanchez was there, coming out of Jackson.
Yeah, he was, and had some amazing fights.
There's some good guys coming in with good records.
Who were your standouts? Like, who were your number one guys
in the beginning or from the whole season?
Just the whole season, because I definitely I had got like 8 of the cast members. I'm like, I followed their whole career.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I was talking about this afterwards. You're talking about five guys on here that are for sure Hall of Famers.
Yeah,
you got Bonner and Stephan are both in the Hall of Fame. Florian Hall of Fame. Diego's going to be for sure a Hall of Fame. No doubt about it.
The number of fights he has, 30 and 13 combined record. 32. Let's see what I have. 32 fights in the UFC.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's insane. Season 1 still going to this day. I mean,
that's what Herman too.
Herman's the same way.
And you don't see that a lot. Like, I was looking at all of these cast members, and like shit, a ton of them don't even have anything about them on the internet even.
No, they're hard to find.
Yeah. I added those guys on Facebook though.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, so there was so basically the way teams broke down is Randy Couture had Mike Swick, who was coming in, I think 6-1. His only loss was to Chris Lieben, who's also on the show with him.
Saw that.
So then you got Lieben, who's I think like 15-1. Bonner was like 7-1. Nate Corey was like 6-1. Carol Alexis, Kincaid, Sanford were all undefeated 4-0, 6-0, 4-0. Loden Kincaid actually had a win over Jason Mayhem Miller before he got on the Ultimate Fighter, which was kind of his big win, to get in there.
Interesting.
And then Randy also had Jason Thacker, which, Strange Brew is one of the more memorable guys from that season anyway. Chuck had Koscheck, who was 4-0. He actually had a win over Luke Kumo, who's on the next season.
That dude was super strange.
He was super strange. He was the Diego of season 2.
He was, but dude, I was digging Diego.
I was,
like him doing his stuff out in the rain.
His yoga, yeah. But so Koscheck's 4-0 coming from, all-American crazy wrestling background. Diego, I think, was like 12-0.
Yeah.
He had a couple wins over guys that eventually would make to the UFC. George Santiago and Guyman. What's the Joker guy? Guyman.
I'm not sure.
And then Josh Rafferty was 11-3. Kenny Florian was 3-1. Kenny Florian wasn't actually supposed to be on the show. So they went to watch Drew Fickett. That's who they wanted. They wanted Drew Fickett for the show, and they went and watched him. And Kenny actually lost to Fickett, but they liked Kenny more than they liked Fickett. So they offered the spot to Kenny instead of Drew Fickett. So Drew Fickett had to...
And Kenny only had like 3 fights or something.
Yeah, he's 3-1.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Southpaw.
Right.
And
crazy jiu-jitsu guy.
Yeah, and we'll talk about his fights in the house later on. But yeah, his jiu-jitsu is off the charts. I saw where he was a second degree in 2010. So he's got to be. It's usually 3 years between degrees. I mean, he's probably like a 5th degree black belt.
Oh, I'm sure. There's no telling. Yeah, he was. I don't remember if he was a black belt when he was on the Ultimate Fighter or not, but his jiu-jitsu was pretty legit already. And he was the smallest guy pretty much on the whole show. 155er.
Dude, so like that's it about Diego. He's a middleweight on the show, and he fights at welterweight, then lightweight, then featherweight.
Him and Kenny both. They both started at middleweight, welterweight, featherweight, and then they both ended up at 45 at one point. So I mean, crazy weight and drop classes.
Yeah.
Then you had Bobby Southworth, who was 8-3 coming in. I think he was probably the heavyweight favorite or light heavyweight favorite. I think coming in. He'd had a fight with Vitor Belfort.
Yeah.
Brutal, wasn't it?
Well, and two, so like that could be a talking point. Man, the image that sent at the time, right?
Yeah. Well, it's crazy to me to go back and watch now and see how much differently I feel about it than I did when I was 15. Because I remember who I thought were the favorites and who I liked and who I didn't like when I was 15, and then now I watch it back and it's like almost a complete 180 of who I liked back then and who I like now. Yeah. So it's a crazy deal. Another guy was Alex Schoenhauer. He was coming in as 10-0. But he was an Argentinian bar fighter. That was his kind of where his 10-0 came from. He was fighting in bars every weekend in Argentina, and I think he came from the same kind of situation as Melvin Guillard, where they were just kind of fighting every weekend in bars against random people, and that's how they got these crazy records built up before they even got on the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, I believe Miguel Torres was that same way, who came out of the same camp as Stephan Bonner.
Yep.
Right? That was who was their coach? It was the one of the. It wasn't a Machado. It was.
I think I have it in here though.
It was Carlson.
Carlson Gracie.
Carlson Senior.
Yeah.
And then he passed away, like right around the same time Miguel lost the WC title.
Yeah, gave it to Brian Bowles.
Yeah. Brian Bowles, and then Joseph Benavidez. He had back-to-back losses, and
that's the nasty cut against Benavidez when he got crazy cut, and then he got guillotined.
Yeah, I trained with him like right after that. He had this crazy scar that they had like put back together.
Frankensteined it back together to try to make it normal.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It was wild.
Also had Sam Hogger, 7-0. He's in Alaska, coming from Alaska, and then Forrest Griffin, who was probably the other light heavyweight favorite coming in. I think he was 9-2. He had lost to Dan Severn and Jeremy Horn. He had wins over Travis Fulton and Jeff Munson, which Jeff Munson eventually fought for the UFC heavyweight title, so wasn't really much of a champ. The interesting thing about this at this time for me was that they had a light heavyweight division and a middleweight division, and Randy and Chuck were the coaches, which were the two light heavyweight. Randy was the champ. Liddell was the number one contender. There was no middleweight champ at all at this time because Murillo Bustamante had already vacated the title and left for Pride. So at the time that they were filming this, there was no like middleweight champ for these guys to really like aim for. Like that's the guy I'm looking for. Because Anderson hadn't arrived on the scene yet. Franklin hadn't arrived on the scene yet. Evan Tanner hadn't really won the title yet. So it was just kind of like a vacant, no one for them to really look up to. So these light heavyweight guys literally are staring at the top two guys in their division every day and the middleweight guys don't even know who the top guy in their division is because there's no champ. So it's just a kind of a weird coincidence of that I thought was weird.
Yeah, that is. And that is kind of the middleweight division as we saw it coalesce, sort of doing that around this time, right? Like, that is when Anderson's
a lot of the new blood was coming in.
Because what was that promotion that he knocked out Tony Frickland on?
Was it
Rage in the Cage?
Was it Rage in the Cage, I think, in England?
Yeah, he had I want to say a few wins on that promotion because he knocked Tony Frickland out with that reverso.
Yeah, I think he beat Lee Murray. I think he beat Lee Murray in Rage in the Cage too.
Yeah, he had a hit, and then he came over and fought, I believe, Chris Lieben.
Lieben was his first, UFC debut.
Yeah,
Chris Lieben didn't know what he was getting into either.
Man, looking at Lieben's record earlier today, I was just like, wow. And then to see, like, he had some heart problems. And then they're like, he finally got cleared by a doctor, and then went back and had these 3 bare knuckle boxing, like, but just like he's either gonna win or like
it's gonna be spectacular one way or the other. Yeah. That's it.
I will say one fight that really stuck out, and then my ears perked up when I came across it, was when he fought Akiyama.
Oh yeah,
he triangle
chokes him. Yeah, you're like, that's very unlike Chris Lieben, but yeah.
Amazing. He had a few fights. Like, I want to say that fight is like he had fought like 3 times in 3 months or something.
Yeah, some crazy. Yeah, he was the cowboy. He was the original Donald Cerrone, where he was fighting anybody, anytime, anywhere. It didn't matter if he just fought last weekend or not. He was just ready to fight.
Yeah, man, and it's wild to see, like, to look back and see what some of those people's careers have. Because I remember when Cowboy came over from WC and Jamie Varner and all those guys. And they had incredible careers over there. Uriah Faber. I remember watching Faber
Miguel
lose
Torres
to Mike Brown for the first time, and I was just like...
That devastating left hook, bounce off the cage, ate that left hook.
Man, like, we were just all in disbelief. We're like, what happened? What?
Well, it's crazy to me to think of guys like Faber that came over and never won a UFC belt. Like, he was the face of WC. He was, the whole WC was built kind of around him in that featherweight division, and then he comes to the UFC and is just never able to get a belt, never able to win the title. Guys like Dan Henderson, guys that win belts everywhere they go, but they can't get that UFC belt, man. It's a crazy.
It is. Yeah, it's well, I mean, shit, Michael Bisping. Yeah, he finally fucking won it. Finally.
Right at the end, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. I liked how they had the assistant coaches.
Yeah.
With, like, because it was the same staff of assistant coaches. I guess, like, were those guys just provided by the UFC? Lehman?
So they had Lehman, Gagno, and Peter Welsh. They were all assigned basically to be the coaches by the UFC. One boxing guy, one Muay Thai guy, and one grappling guy, basically. So that was their coaching staff that they were provided, along with Liddell and Couture. And they each got to do it their own way, basically.
I like the training montages. That was one thing when we were texting about this. That it was really awesome, and I felt like season 2 was a little lacking in that. Season 3, season 3, it showed some things. Like I caught a bunch of montages of them, like with Hamill doing dirty boxing and stuff, where I was like, that's some cool drills.
Yeah.
But season 1, like, they did have some cool.
I think in season 1, like I said, they were really trying to get people into. They were trying to get really away from the stigma of what the UFC had become, and really kind of show what these guys went through, what they did every day to kind of draw in that audience and that crowd. It was trying to make it more than about just the fights. They're trying to kind of give these guys background stories and kind of give the whole picture of what it takes to be in the UFC, not just 2 guys fighting in a cage every week.
Yeah. So you want to get into some episode highlights, like how the flow of the show was?
Yeah, we can go straight. Yeah,
right on. So like right out the gate, you start to get a sense of, I don't know, you can't help but like the Chris Lieben, but you also like, that is where they won a bunch of people over. Like, that dude brought so much drama and baggage
every time,
like daddy issues and everything.
Well, even night 1, he's trying to get everybody drunk, trying to get everybody to take shots and get drunk and have a good old time. Yeah,
and then what? Didn't he piss on somebody's pillow or something on the very first?
He spritzed. Remember, it wasn't a piss; it was a spritz.
It's a spritz
on Jason Thacker's pillow. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez.
But this is the same episode you're talking about with Diego and his weird yoga poses. Everybody else is downstairs drinking, taking shots, and Diego's upstairs, in his full yoga pose all by himself.
Yeah, yeah. It is interesting to see how they argue with one another, like just like the petty bickering.
Well, even like day one, you see Koscheck and Lieben don't get along from the very beginning, which is kind of a theme through the entire season, is how much these two guys don't like each other, and it's immediate. And it starts like day one; they immediately don't like each other.
I mean, I don't like Josh Koscheck.
I mean, yeah, I can't really blame him, But it's funny because Koscheck's talking about his wrestling, and Chris Lieben's telling him, "Dude, what do you say? I'll show up smelling like strippers covered in glitter and still put the stamp on you. I'll still knock you out before you can take me down." So,
yeah, that was wild when they do fight later in the season. So one thing that was a standout, I think, is like a relevant talking point here, is that this occurred a few times in this show. We've seen it out of gyms, but like injuries and training.
Oh man, a lot of them.
Happens a couple. Corey gets cut and Griffin both get cut in the first episode, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Bonner and Nate.
Bonner got headbutted by Griffin.
Yeah.
But then later on, in a few episodes, there's another training injury where one group bumps into another group, and like that had happened to Cain Velasquez, for example, in the gym, in the practice room. But that's the sort of stuff that, man, it is hard to mitigate stuff like that, but you see that stuff come out.
Well, it's good too, because I feel like we see a lot of guys where the guy pulls out of a fight, and people are like, "Oh, he's just a wuss, he's faking it," and you're like, "No, man, you get to see this is stuff that really happens. Like, this is not planned. This isn't anything. This freak accident stuff like this happens." Especially when you get 8 guys in each weight class in a room, like, hey, these 7 guys are trying to take away your dream. These 7 guys are the guys you got to beat if you want this. You want to make it to the UFC. If you want this career, you got to beat these 7 guys. So,
yeah. Well, and how often too? So, like, do you have a guy that's like your size, your weight class that is in the gym, and he's and you let's say you do have that training partner, like. You don't have 4 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have eight middleweights there helping you get ready. I mean, some gyms might.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson's.
Some
AKA the really big gyms, but for the most part, you're training with whoever will show up. It's just whoever you got.
Yeah.
I do think one of the crazy things about this, so the big deal for this training, this evaluation process is the treadmill run, where they have to start it.
I made one of my guys. I made Edward do that.
I do it all the time, but that was the big deal, was that you had to run 5 minutes at 5 miles an hour, then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so 30 minutes to run, and the only person on the whole show to finish it is Chris Lieben, the guy that got super wasted, super hammered the night before, and so I thought that was a pretty interesting thing. It kind of lends to his mental toughness, I guess you could say, coming into this, like you said, with all the baggage and all the issues he had, but he still managed to,
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that guy definitely. The punches I've seen him wade through to hit insane. You, when you get hit and it stops you, but then he just keeps coming forward.
There's no backing
stops
up.
You in your tracks, and then he just keeps stepping.
Yep. Never stops throwing.
But so the first couple episodes, you really see Lieben's personality coming out
for sure.
His problems. Couture loses the first 2 challenges in the first 2 episodes.
Yep.
And then also Thacker and Chris Sanford both go home by the end of episode 2.
No fights, no nothing. They're both out because they can't win no challenges. They both get sent home.
So what do you think about how they did the challenges in the first season?
I think it was part of the reality TV part of it. Like, you know what I mean? They, like, in order to draw in that reality TV group, because like I said, we talked about the bigger ones like Survivor, Big Brother, those types of, that's kind of the staple. You have a challenge, and then whenever you lose a challenge, somebody goes home. So I think that was kind of their way of trying to tie that audience or that group into the show. Like, hey, we have challenges just like y'all have, and somebody gets sent home just like y'all send somebody home, but we also have fights. So that was kind of their shtick, I guess, to pull those people in. Yeah. But they were kind of ridiculous. The challenges were a little wild.
They were, and it's like. I don't know. I liked how they've done, how they changed up some of the challenges in the later, like, just like when it's like, oh, your team lost, so you go, we got to pick somebody to go home. Yeah. Like pick somebody to fight. Yeah, like exactly, you're the person that has to fight now. Yeah. But I think that in these earlier seasons, they're finding a lot of their footing of, like,
oh, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, think about all the unexpected things that, like when they're having to do these team reshuffles, right? It's like, oh,
not something they saw coming. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's what we talked about. There's an episode we talked about where a lot of the guys didn't think they were going to fight. They didn't think there was going to be any fights on the show until the final. They thought the final 2 guys were going to fight, and that was it. It was all going to be challenges. It was all going to be people getting sent home. So a lot of these guys are way overweight. They're not in very good shape. They're not ready to fight at all because, like I said, they didn't no idea what to expect coming in. They didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
That was how we get into Bobby Southworth's amazing weight cut.
20 pounds in 24 hours,
Yeah.
dude. I don't know how he wasn't. Was he throwing up green bile? Because
I don't know. I never
cut
saw
less,
that part, but
less weight than that, and I threw up green bile.
Yeah.
I mean, but
it's also about body size too, though. I mean, you didn't weigh. He comes in at
true.
230
I was cutting
pounds.
to 55.
Yeah.
Dude.
Oh, trust me, I've been there.
Oh.
55 is nobody's friend.
Jeez. Man. But yeah, that was rough. But man, he did it. I think he had to do a second attempt on the official way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, here's one thing I was thinking about, and I've thought about this before in the past. But it's like, if these are not sanctioned fights, like why is the athletic commission there? Why is they are sanctioned fights, but they're not on their record.
No, they're the exhibition fights or whatever. Yeah.
So like, why? It's interesting that it is sanctioned also.
Well, I think there was talk whenever he came in over that Loden could allow him to be over because it was an exhibition fight. But Loden again is an undersized light heavyweight. He wasn't a big light heavyweight anyway, so him and Randy talked about it, and they were like, no, why would we make his life easier? Like, why would I give him weight when he's already going to have 20 pounds on me regardless? So that's why he had to go back and cut again. But I remember them talking about that because I'm pretty sure Bobby asked Dana that, can I be a little bit over? And Dana said, well, we'll have to see. And then when he weighed in heavy, I remember Loden and Randy kind of walking off and being like, and Couture asking him, hey, do you want to just give him, I think he was like 2 pounds over. I think he was like 207 or something, 208. And he's like, do you just want to give him the weight? And Loden's like, no, why would I give him that extra 2 pounds, So.
Well, and then, okay, so we were messing about this. Loden Sinclair has passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, 43 years old.
Dude,
crazy.
It is why I put ages down on some of these guys about like where they're at, what they're doing now. And I mean, some of them are damn near 50 years old.
I know, it's crazy. Isn't it?
I think maybe somebody was 47. I think it might have been Nate Corey, but I could be
I
wrong.
think Nate was one of the older guys going into the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a little bit older than everybody else, I think.
So Southward beats Loden.
Yeah, knocks him out. Yep. We also forget the what do you call the "Do you want to be a fighter" speech is in there. In that, I think it's the second or third episode, where all the guys are kind of whining about not getting paid and didn't think they were going to have to fight, and there's just a whole lot of just general whining coming from the whole group, and so Dana decides to come in and address it.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we get to see Koscheck dragging Bobby back into the sauna over and over again as he says he can't get up. So
Bobby Southworth went on to eventually own an AKA gym, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. He went on to be a Strikeforce light heavyweight champ too.
Yeah. He had an interesting career outside of Tough, Yeah. And we've been just saying, it's interesting to see how many of these guys, particularly from like season 2, that like they didn't even do
just
MMA
fell
anymore.
off the face of the planet.
Yeah. Like, maybe I'm not a fighter.
Yeah.
Like that one guy that Matt Hughes' training partner that lost.
Talking about Mike Whitehead?
Yeah.
No, he had a lot of fights.
Did he have more fights after that? Boy,
I think he was like 18-4 after.
He said, he's like, maybe I'm just not a fighter.
Yeah.
Like he was
I think
all
that's kind
sad.
of the go-to speech when you get beat. Maybe I'm just not a fighter. Maybe I didn't just get beat. Maybe I just not cut out for this. But
oh man.
So we talk about Thacker and Chris Sanford both getting cut. Basically, both getting cut because they're out of shape. Neither one of them were in shape to fight, and so through the evaluation, through the first few challenges, they both struggled. I think Thacker actually tried to quit at one point, and Bobby and Loden talked him into kind of sticking it out and staying with it. But they both end up getting cut because they were the two weakest members of the team, basically. An interesting thing in the episode, too, that Sanford tried to use to his advantage was the fact that Chris Lieben jumps the wall and leaves the compound, which was a big deal. They weren't allowed to leave. They weren't allowed to go anywhere, but Chris decides he needs to talk to somebody, so he's going to jump the wall and go find a payphone. And they kind of just ignore it. It never really gets brought up again after that. Like, it just gets pushed to the side, and they just pretend like it never happened. And Chris Sanford gets sent home anyway.
Yeah.
Which, again, like you talked about, is a fact. I think that they kind of had all their eggs in this one basket. Like, if this doesn't work out, we may not have the UFC anymore, and Chris Lieben is kind of the big part of the whole show, so we don't want to send him home for something silly like this.
Yeah, well, shoot, with this guy from midway through season 3 that left, just because they're like, dude, you can't get a phone call.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm out of here, dude.
Yeah. Well, this is just one of Chris Lieben's many antics, I guess, that you feel like would have got him kicked off the show later in seasons, but
yeah. So Sanchez fights in episode 4.
Yep.
And his first couple of fights, first round rear naked choke. right? Like in
The last three, was it Alexis, right?
Yeah, he beats Alexis in episode 4, first round, rear naked choke, like early in the round. And then the episode after that is when Corey is injured by
5.
Randy.
Yeah, Randy's the one that does it, yeah.
But, man, I get nervous, too, about just training with groups like that in a cage, which is something I saw him do multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I can get, 4 guys, you know.
Like 2 and 2.
Yeah, maybe 6. But, damn, I don't know. I get paranoid. I mean, it happens out here all the time. Like, we have
see it in open mat areas, not just in a cage,
space. And there's, 3 groups right here all together. I'm like, guys.
Someone's about to get cut. Y'all need to back up.
Yeah.
This, I think that season 4 or that episode 4 is really when you start to see the team divide happen. You start to see the team green, team blue. Really, everybody's kind of on each other's nerves. Bonner and Diego are getting into arguments and fights over asparagus. Yeah, and the shower. Back and forth in the shower.
Yeah.
Lieben kind of calls Bobby out for being a coward and picking the smallest, littlest light heavyweight on their team to fight. We see Bonner's very upset that Loden gets sent home. I guess Bonner and Loden were like best friends in the house, and the idea from the beginning was that Bonner was going to be the guy to fight Bobby because Bonner had the most experience and was the biggest light heavyweight on their team. And so he kind of felt like he kind of let Loden down, that he got Loden sent home because he didn't end up fighting.
And I didn't know this, and maybe I forgot, but Bonner was a Golden Gloves champ.
He was,
I knew about his taekwondo. I knew about his jiu-jitsu, but I didn't know he had that boxing background.
Yeah.
Like, that makes him well-rounded.
Yeah, one of the most well-rounded guys on the show coming in.
Yeah. And you know what's sad is you look at Bonner's record, and he has some notable wins.
He had a lot of injuries.
But like that Kimura over, I think it was James Irvin. That was a good one because Irvin was reputable at the time.
At the time, he kind of had some big knockouts coming in, You
remember when Anderson came up to 205 and just dispatched James Irvin? And then he goes to middleweight after that. He gets beat by the middleweight champ and then decides he's going to middleweight. I don't know what he was doing. But Bonner beat someone else that I was like, okay, that's notable. But it was only like a couple of people. But then he had a couple of the Griffin scraps. And let's see, I think
he also, it's crazy because you see the big gaps in his fights from all the injuries where he just missed out on these big chunks of time because he was hurt.
Notable wins over Jardine.
Oh yeah, Keith Jardine. That's another anomaly we'll talk about in season 2 guy. That's another dude that was but this then we got more Lieben Koscheck fights going on throughout the house.
And then they end up in episode 6 they end up actually fighting each other, which is Koscheck just wrestle fucks him for two whole rounds. Okay, so let's talk about that because first season they do this 2-round with this, which I like.
Sudden death, sudden death third.
And they didn't do that in the second season.
No,
they did 3
changed
rounds.
A lot of things.
And then they went back to the sudden death, but then there's some fights. It's like I don't have a better solution or anything, but some of them you're like, there should have been a third round, Or I think if it was maybe they could have put this rule, and I did have a solution. If it's a split, it has to go to the third round.
If you can't win by unanimous decision.
Like that. I felt like they could. I felt like they were searching for something like that. But that's what got me off thinking about the athletic commission and wondering. But maybe they had weird stipulations.
There's no telling. 05 was when things, like I said, were just kind of making that turn and things were coming around, and who knew what was going on back then.
And then too, Chuck's team wins all the challenges pretty much,
one of them,
right?
It's just
the one where they're carrying them in their recliner.
That's a pretty good.
That's
through the water.
One.
That's a whole nother.
They're they're dropping it.
They drop Randy in the water.
But after Koscheck wins,
we got to go into episode 5 though, because we got to go into the lead up for this, because this to me is the most. This is to me where kind of the whole season kind of swings, is on this episode 5 drama. So basically, Dana decides he's going to take everybody out. They've all been working hard. They've been doing their thing. He's going to take everybody to the Hard Rock. They're going to have dinner. They're going to have drinks. So the guys make a pact that they're all going to drink. No one person's going to be left out. If one of them's drinking, they're all drinking. So they all get hammered, every single one of them. And so then they end up coming back to the house, and there's arguments galore. Diego's acting like a nutcase. They're trying to keep him in the bed. He's throwing up everywhere. And then the Bobby Lieben fight starts out by the pool.
Fatherless bastard.
Fatherless bastard.
Oh my God.
Starts the whole thing. So they have their disagreement, their fight by the pool. Lieben obviously is upset. He's already, like we talked about it before, he's already very drunk, emotional guy to begin with. Bobby tries to say he's sorry, but nobody's really buying it. It's kind of, one of those things like you said it, you can't really take it back at this point. So as this continues on, of course, the whole time Josh Koscheck's just stirring the pot, instigating the whole thing between the two of them because him and Bobby are buddies and he hates Lieben, so he's just trying to stir up the whole thing anyway. So we get to where Chris decides he's going to sleep outside. He doesn't want to be with them anymore. He doesn't want to be around them. He's going to take his pillow and his blanket and he's going to go outside and sleep in the front yard, which, is weird, but, somewhat understandable. Yeah. And so a couple hours later, Bobby and Josh are still drinking, still having a good old time, and decide they're going to go spray him with the water hose. That'll be a good idea. That is going to end well. That'll diffuse the situation. To which Lieben responds by going on a drunken rampage and kicking down doors, breaking glass, destroying the entire house.
Yeah. And punches his own knuckle off.
Removes his knuckle on a glass window.
Oh, dude, that was rough.
What I thought was funny through the whole thing is that as soon as it happens, Koscheck disappears. He's gone. He completely hides in the backyard, does not want any part of Lieben at that point. He is out of there. And Bobby's just kind of following him through the house, laughing at all the stuff he's doing. But yeah, that was kind of where the catalyst started for them two to have their fight. So basically, after all this comes out, the next day, Dana looks at all the footage and talks to both of them.
Yeah, he's like, we're making this happen.
Yeah, Bobby and Josh apparently try to put the blame off on, it's all Lieben's fault. They didn't have nothing to do with it. We didn't spray him with the water hose. We just sprayed the ground around him, which is, if you watch the videos, is a complete lie because they literally sprayed the whole top half of his blanket with the water. So Dana's solution is they're going to fight. We're going to skip the challenge. We're not going to do anything else. Lieben and Koscheck are going to fight, and somebody's going to go home. And then, like you talked about, Koscheck just wrestles Lieben the whole time and wins a decision.
Yeah. And then it was 2 rounds.
Two round fight.
Decision. Yep. Yeah. But then they do have to reshuffle teams around that time.
Yeah, because now Randy's down to 2 middleweights because Lieben and Karalexis have both gone home.
Yeah, so in that same episode, Bonner defeats Southworth.
Yeah, I think it's the next episode, maybe.
That would be 7. They do a team reshuffle.
Oh yeah.
Bonner defeats Southworth by split decision after 2 rounds again. Mm-hmm. Which I don't have any other notes on that. And then it gets into, that's when you start finding out that Corey's probably not coming back.
Yeah, they kind of announced that he's going to have surgery, and that's probably the end of his run. He's going to be done on the show pretty much. So they decided to keep him on as a coach, which is kind of
was cool.
Kind of a cool deal because he's one of Randy's guys from back home, and we also get into the argument between Bobby and Dana.
Oh yeah, that was so fun.
Where Bobby is very upset about the decision and throwing a temper tantrum about the decision basically, and Dana basically tells him like, "Hey man, that's fighting. You can't leave it in the hands of judges and then be upset at what happens, And this is kind of where we see more of Bobby's attitude. Bobby's kind of gets labeled as the whiner through the whole season. He kind of whines, complains about everything through the whole time, and this just kind of adds more to that persona that they gave him.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. I was like, come on, dude. But then, I felt like Dana was really playing it up also.
Oh, yeah, I think so, too, yeah. Well, him and Chuck talk about it, about how that's why Bobby never made it, because he's got a bad attitude, and he's always looking to point the finger at somebody else. It's always somebody else's fault why, these things happen, so.
Yeah. So Corey's out.
Corey gets set out.
But he chooses Chris Lieben
to replace him.
He's kind of he's always had sympathy.
Yeah, well, they're teammates.
The
they come from Team Quest together, and he's known Chris for a long time, so he kind of understands some of Chris's personal demons. I think more than other people do.
Yeah. But it's wild when Lieben comes back. You notice in that episode, and then later when he fights again, how fucked up his knuckle.
Oh, it's bad, isn't it?
It is.
It's so nasty.
You see in the second fight after they take his wraps off, after he comes back, it's it's got all bloody on the inside of the wrap. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, this is also the kind of the episode where we start to see Sam getting alienated from the blue team for his behavior. I guess he skips out on a workout to go running with the other opposite team. Misses the whole workout with Team Liddell.
I think it's later, like episode 10 or something, that he
The thief.
no, episode 9, yeah, he's accused of stealing.
The thief. Yeah, that's why I say this is kind of where it started. This is kind of where the issues with Sam started, is here in this season.
Yeah, which that guy was, where did you say he was from, like Alaska?
He's from Alaska, the Alaskan assassin, Sam Hogger.
Yeah, he didn't, I didn't do a lot of background on him, but he didn't really do much after this.
Not a lot, no. Not post-tough, no.
Let's see. In that episode is when Sanchez gets another over Rafferty.
Yeah, Rafferty chose to fight Sanchez, too. That was a big interesting thing. Like, of all the guys, because who was it? Diego, Koscheck, or Kenny? He could have chose to fight any of those, and he chose Diego of all those three, which is probably the last one I would have picked. I probably would have picked either of the other two first.
You know, I will say, like, one of the most, and I just watched it recently because UFC put it up online. Diego Sanchez versus Clay Guida.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's one of the best. That's his first 55 fight, wasn't it?
I think so.
I think it was his first fight at 55. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you know, and too, I remember watching this when Diego fights BJ with that nasty
cut at the end.
Yeah, that's very reminiscent of that Miguel cut.
Yeah,
right across his forehead.
Yeah, right across the forehead. Yeah. But yeah, Diego ends up dominating Josh, kind of like everybody knew he would, going in, and
second first round win by rear naked too.
Yep, it's another rear naked choke, and then again you talk about the team reshuffle. Now Kenny gets sent to the green team. Yeah, that was the thing. Josh had got sent to the green team earlier, so he'd already trained with all three guys, already knew who he had advantage over, who he didn't, and he still chose to fight Diego. So now Kenny gets sent to the green team.
In that same episode, doesn't Schoenhauer tap out to strikes to Forrest?
Yeah. Yeah, at the end of that episode.
What do you think? I mean, I always grew up talking shit about people who tap to strikes.
I don't know, dude. Forrest is a monster. After watching some of the fights Forrest had, you're like, oh, I get it. I got it.
So doesn't Forrest have a win over Chael Sonnen? Didn't he have a win over him before?
I don't remember. I don't remember if he did before the show or not.
I was thinking so. I was thinking that maybe that where he lost to Jeremy Horn was like a tournament or something.
Maybe, yeah. And he beat Chael in that same tournament.
But I could be wrong.
He also had the fight. They talk about this too, where he got his arm broke, and the guy wouldn't stop. He was trying to tell the referee his arm was broken. He wanted to quit, and the guy wouldn't stop chasing him, so he just knocked him out. There's that. That was also gets brought up in this episode too.
Yeah. Man, I always just had a lot of admiration for Forrest.
I did too. He's such a hardworking guy.
I was so sad when he retired too. I was in Vegas and got to go to a press event for the second fight that he had against Tito.
Oh, okay. Yeah, him and Tito's second. Yeah.
Because I guess was it a draw or something the first time? Or did
Tito
won?
I think Tito won a split the first time.
Okay.
And I think Forrest won the second time, and then they ended up having a third one.
Yeah, I don't know who I'm thinking. I think I have a note of it's something that stood out there where there was like a weird draw between like it was in the light heavyweight division. I'm almost positive. Yeah. But and I want to say it was one of these guys from these first 3 seasons.
Yeah.
So Griffin may be out, right? He gets this big
nasty cut from Schoenhauer. Yeah. He has to have all those stitches in his forehead.
Yeah. And you get to. I do like how they. Sometimes I think like what you're saying with like building up reality TV.
Yeah.
I like the one dude's like, my back hurt.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But like
Diego's hip injury and.
Yeah, but then it's like some free medical treatment. I guess I don't know, but like when they're like stitching up the head, like you're like,
yeah, this one's real. This is not. They're not playing this one up. He had a nasty cut, man. It was a bad one.
Yeah, it was. In that, so Griffin may be out. He chooses Southworth
to come back and take his place if he can't fight.
Yeah, which doesn't. He ends up being able to fight.
They had a really good. I wrote this guy's name down. Was it Dr. Sue? They had an amazing guy that was doing their stitches. Yeah, Dr. Sue, the ophthalmologist, eye surgeon guy.
Think about all the connections they have.
Oh, I can't imagine.
That they always pull. I mean, dude, they're like a syndicate with not a lot of crime.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally, like I've thought that several times. I mean, think about all of the connects that they created or worked or that the Fertittas had to pull just to get all of this stuff together, like the doctors, I mean, there's just
commission people to come every single, because they're fighting like every 3 or 4 days. So the commission's got to come every three. You couldn't get the Arkansas Athletic Commission to show up once a week. There's no way.
For real, dude. So what ends up happening is Kenny fights Lieben, Southpaw and Southpaw.
Yeah, this is where they make the announcement that they're going to make the teams fight each other now, so that they can guarantee a Couture versus Liddell final. The only way to guarantee that there's one from each team in the finals to make them fight each other. So they got to fight each other on the same team.
Yeah, which you know, I don't mind that.
Yeah, I mean,
like the teams, like I don't even really see. Like I know, I like how they're trying to build that up, but it's like really, it's like, dude, this is fighting. This is literally every man for themselves. Like I get if they're two guys that like are from Team Quest together and stuff like that.
If it was Corey and Lieben, this would have been a real situation if those two had still been in.
Yeah. But that's the risk you run, and like when you've had people leave Jacksons and stuff over the years, like with that controversy, Rashad
and Jon Jones. Yeah,
that was a big one. That was the falling out. Is like, well, John's going to be next. And you're going to have to fight him probably.
Yeah. Well, that's all because of Rashad's knee injury, too. That's what kind of Rashad was supposed to fight for the title. He gets hurt. They give Jones the title shot instead, and Jones wins the belt. And then they're like, oh, here we are now. Now what are we going to do, you know, kind of. Yeah. But it's part of it, you know. That's what Dana kind of says. He's like, hey, you got to be able to, at this point, if you want to be the UFC champ, you may have to fight any one of these guys tomorrow. You got to be ready for that stuff. So.
That's the reality of it. So, and you see that less often. Those dudes were both southpaws.
Yeah, two southpaw versus, and it's funny because they said they were trading southpaw tricks back and forth right before they found out they had to fight each other.
Yeah, they were. I remember there's a little montage with that, but it is. And like when I see that, I'm like, oh, you guys are just doing shit that ortho people do. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I've started to chart this. Like, I bought a. Have you seen that dynamic striking website?
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's really good.
Is it?
If you ever want to take a look at mine,
you have to check it out.
Mine and Nate Murdoch, we have a shared account.
Yeah.
But I snagged the Trevor Whitman one the other day.
That's got to be good.
And then also, I watched part of it, and it is. And then Mike Winklejohn had one on there too, right? Cool. But like more and more coaches are starting to talk about ortho on southpaw, and that's becoming like a more and more talked about.
It's bad news
situation.
For me. It's bad news for me. I had a lot of advantage over the guys because they didn't know how to deal with southpaws.
Yeah. You fight southpaw?
Yeah, always. Yeah, I've always been a southpaw.
But you're right-handed.
But I'm right-handed. Yeah.
See, so like I subscribe to the same rule of thought because I fight ortho, but I'm left-handed.
Yeah, that's Bisping. Bisping's the same way. Bisping's left-handed.
Okay, here's another one for you. Here's a southpaw that's right-handed. Vasily Lomachenko.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so like his dad, that's like his dad put him through the dancing lessons and all that. But yeah, he is a southpaw, or he's a southpaw, but he's right-handed.
Yeah,
but
it's a big advantage, I think, man.
Well, he was like, I've heard his dad say the same thing, like of remarking on the lead hand and power side forward, and like the reasons why
closer to being closer to the target.
Well, so for example, I play guitar. Like I explain this to everybody, and I play a right-handed guitar, but I'm like, I don't know how you right-handed people play right-handed guitars. Like you're doing all the
non-dominant hands,
dexterous shit with your your non-dominant hand. So interesting.
Your strong hands just
strong,
up and down. Yeah,
my strong hand.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh man. So there's it's a cut, right? Lieben gets cut.
Yeah, Lieben's. I won't say dominating, but he's clearly winning the fight. He's bullying. We talk about how small Kenny was. He's bullying Kenny around, pushing him up against the cage, and they get into an exchange. And Kenny just throws. This is the first victim of Kenny's now infamous sharp elbows as he cuts Lieben open. The fight gets stopped.
Yeah, man, I really liked Kenny coming up. He was one of my favorites. He was somewhat recently. As a commentator. Got accused of like ripping off things Joe Rogan said.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember seeing
I'm like,
that.
Should I talk about stuff Joe Rogan says on the podcast all the time on my podcast?
Yeah, I'm ripping Joe Rogan off every day. I'm in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just like, I heard Joe Rogan say that. I mean, I usually say that I heard him say it, but
I remember some fight analysis or something that he heard from Joe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think Joe cares.
Cite your sources, I guess. I don't know.
I don't think Joe cares. I don't think Joe cares if anybody can rip Joe off. He don't care.
Except for that new dude, the black guy that doesn't do MMA.
Oh, Stephen A.
Oh, man.
Dude, I hope they don't bring him back. It's just silliness.
If it's not him, it'll probably be somebody else.
Yeah,
So after that, you go into episode 11, where Diego fights Koscheck.
Yes, and this becomes one of those interesting fights because they're both wrestlers, coming from a wrestling background. So what's going to happen? And basically, they both decide they're going to be stand-up fighters in this fight. Neither one of them decides to wrestle.
Well, that is interesting how, like, I was reading how surprised people were, like, the perceptions going into the Bonner-Griffin fight for the finale, like, that it turned out to be this striking war.
Slugfest, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then, like, Hamill in one of his fights in the house in the third season.
Yeah.
But that was one of those fights, too. I definitely would have liked to see in a third round just because of who they were.
Did it go? They switched to 3-5s for the semifinals, remember?
Oh, yeah.
They switched over to 3-5s.
Okay,
and that's really what gets Koscheck in trouble. The fight's very even for the first 2 rounds, but as the third round starts...
I do remember that.
Diego's conditioning and Diego's weird mindset or whatever starts to take over, and he kind of really beats Koscheck up pretty bad in the third round.
Remember when he was the nightmare and then he became the
dream? Yeah. Well, he was still the nightmare at this point, I think. So he was messing Koscheck up in that third round. Yeah,
excellent. But he ends up winning. It's a split decision win.
Yeah, this is one of those ones that's craziest decisions. So 2 guys score at 29-28 Diego. The other guy scores at 30-27 for Koscheck, and Koscheck loses.
Typical scoring.
Yeah, sounds pretty pretty reasonable for judges. But yeah.
That's why we can't do that rule I was saying about the split decision.
Exactly, right there, because you never. Yeah. So after this, we see Josh. Josh ends up having to go to the hospital when it's over. Basically, from exhaustion, really, more than anything. He didn't really get hurt by punches or kicks. He was just physically exhausted, and they ended up taking him to the hospital.
How many times have you experienced that from fighting?
I can only think of a couple that I've been to the point where I thought maybe I should go to the hospital from not, like I said, just from physical exhaustion, being that tired.
Yeah, like you don't, like I was telling somebody about my first MMA fight. Like I dominated the whole fight, won midway through the second round, took no damage, submitted him, took him down twice. Like everything went well, but dude, afterwards, like I remember sitting down in the corner and like Mike Page's corner, man, I'm like, Mike, I can't go back out there, dude. I'm like dying right now.
It's over. I can't do this.
I was like, I can't breathe. Oh my God. Oh. But it was just the adrenaline.
Oh, my first fight was like that too.
And that was my set. I had a kickboxing fight, but I got a quick first round TKO with a liver knee.
Yeah.
And that one, like, afterwards, I was like, oh, my body.
My whole body hurts.
But like I didn't take damage. And I never forgot.
It's that strain. You put that strain on your body to throw those punches and kicks. Yeah, my very first fight was like that too. We ended up going all 3 rounds, but after the second round, the guys come back in and they're like, hey, it's 1 round apiece. And I'm like, man, I was really hoping you weren't going to say that because I'm so tired. I don't think I can do anything else. And me and this guy had this like unspoken agreement that we were going to do nothing for the third round at all, and it ended up being a draw because he won 1 round, I won 1, and neither one of us did anything in the third round. We just stood around and looked at each other.
Yeah.
But I remember that. I was just like, dude, I can't even lift my arms right now. Like if he wants to punch me in the face, he's just going to do it because I can't defend it.
Yeah, it's such a contrast. It's so hard to simulate that.
Oh, dude, it's. I tell people that all the time. Like, oh, I'm so nervous. I'm like, well, you might as well get used to it because it's going to be there for a while.
Like I was, like, there's like when I say that, it's like I was in such good shape.
I thought the same thing.
I cut down. Like I'd previously been weighing like 230 at my highest. I'd had a fight at 185.
Yeah.
I'd cut down. This fight was at 170. Like I was running, doing bleachers, sprints, hills. I was in shape.
Yep.
And it didn't matter.
No, that adrenaline is it's a whole different kind of exhaustion. You can't simulate that at all.
Yeah. So Diego wins. Then in episode 12, Griffin defeats Hogger.
Sam,
yeah. In the second round, also with strikes.
Yeah, pretty similar to the Alex fight. A little longer, but similar.
And then Bonner defeats Mike Swick in that same episode with a triangle armbar.
Yep. Which Swick was doing very well. Swick was actually doing really good in the fight until he got caught. Yep. But they talk about the weight. Bonner weighed in at 204, cut weight to 204, and Swick weighs 192 pounds. A weigh-in day.
Yeah.
So you talk about the crazy weight classes of this season. And that's the thing. Swick had fought Lieben at middleweight like a year before that. Like most of his fights have been at middleweight, but for some reason he's a 205er on the show, and it's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure like in the hearts and minds of the fighters and the coaches, they're like, well, he's this way. But like for the producers and because like when they bring back, what's his name?
Ross.
In
Ross.
season 3, it's like, dude, he's like, you're going to have to move up weight class. He's like, fuck it, I'm a fighter.
Let's go. Yeah.
So they wrap up the 12 episodes. Finale happens.
Yep. A lot of the guys from the season end up coming back to fight other guys from the season. So you see Alex Karalexis comes back, ends up getting a TKO victory over Rafferty.
Mm-hmm.
Swick KOs Alex Schoenhauer quickly, too. I think it was like 30 seconds or something. Quick, fast knockout. Nate ends up TKOing Loden. Loden drops down to middleweight, fights Nate Corey off of his injury, gets TKO'd. Koscheck gets a KO over Sanford, which is a wild one. And then Levin gets a gimme. He gets a TKO Jason Thacker.
Yeah.
And Sam Hogger, surprisingly enough, gets a unanimous decision win over Bobby Southworth. So talked about how Sam didn't really do much the whole show, but he ends up coming out and getting a win.
Yeah. And then, too, so on that, on the finale card, you see Franklin fighting and beating
Shamrock at 205. Yeah, that's their main event.
Yeah. And that makes some sense. So, like, when, season 3, we'll talk about in a few minutes, but how it's Shamrock.
This was Shamrock kind of making his comeback.
Tito,
yeah.
Like how in season 2, Rich Franklin is one of the coaches, and I think they really built on like the zeitgeist of what was going on in the culture.
They kind of kept it all tied together.
Yeah.
So then in our finals from the show, we get Diego ends up fighting Kenny.
Yeah.
So they both go home. Diego goes back to Albuquerque. Kenny goes back to Boston, and they end up having a pretty one-sided fight. Kind of pretty much the way you thought it was going to go. Diego comes out and just kind of bullies, wrestles, beats up Diego or Kenny. I mean, he gets a first round.
Yeah, another first round victory.
So 3 first round victories and 1 decision. So Diego ends up fighting 4 times in this one season, and Sam Hogger fights once. All in a semifinal. And
that's always interesting how like some of the best dudes end up going to war like 2 or 3, 4 times, and some of the guys that like they end up getting an opportunity and they fought like maybe once.
One time, yeah.
And might even have lost.
Yeah. Yeah, so then we go into Bonner Griffin, which is really the fight that changes the face of the UFC. Yeah. Unbeknownst at the time, but it changes the whole complexion of the sport basically with this 1 15-minute fight.
Well, apparently the perceptions of like the Franklin Shamrock fight was over so fast. It was like everybody's like, oh, it's a Mike Tyson fight or something. Like they were just disappointed. Like, you know how like people be, oh, it was a decision.
Well,
it was too fast.
Honestly, I don't think that Rich Franklin and Ken Shamrock could have done anything to live up to the fight that happened right before that. I don't think there's anything they could have done to live up to Bonner to Griffin. That was just one of those
everybody's
fights.
like, that was the real main event.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
for sure.
Pretty much, yeah.
But they both get given contracts.
Ultimately, they both get the contract after the Forrest wins by unanimous decision. Super close fight. Hate to have been a judge on that one. That's one of those fights that I don't know how they made a pick to winner for that fight. It was so back and forth, up and down. Both guys had moments. Both guys got hurt. Both guys got cut, I'm pretty sure. Like, it was just a wild, crazy fight.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see.
So here's another kind of crazy side story that I found out about this. There was no season 2 going into the finale. They had no plans for season 2. Season 1 was going to be a one-off. It was going to be over and it was going to be done with.
Interesting.
After Bonner Griffin, Spike TV comes to Dana White and said, hey, listen, we need to hammer out this deal. So they make a deal in between 2 production trucks in the back parking lot about what they're going to do for season 2 for the next season. All because of, again, Bonner Griffin, man. Just sparked the interest, sparked the whole world.
It did. Like what I was saying earlier, for like our generation, that was the hoist case.
That was it. Yeah, this is the one. You know, like the sport was nearly dead, and this kind of brought it back. And like Joe Rogan talks about, there was people all over the world calling their friends, dude, you got to watch this fight. Like, you got to go find a TV wherever you are right now and watch this, because that's just what it was, man. It was just a wild, crazy scrap that shot ratings through the roof.
Well, yeah, I wonder what the ratings were like. How long was it before they fought again?
Did they have a fight again?
Forrest and Stephan? Yeah, they fought a second time, and it was a very similar fight, and Forrest won another decision. Yeah. But it was just like, I want to say Forrest beat him up a little bit more.
A little bit more, yeah. Well, that's the thing. After this is when kind of Bonner's injuries kind of started to pile up. Kind of after the finale, he kind of really struggled to just stay consistent, to stay fighting and stay in the show. So that's why I say you see the big gaps in his fight record where he got hurt and missed time.
Yeah. What do you think about like one talking point on just like the show in general that's always been for people I know that have auditioned is the audition process?
Oh, it's wild.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how it was for the first season because like we said, this was kind of they didn't really know what they were doing. It was kind of wild. But if you watch on Fight Pass for seasons 2 and 3, they have audition tapes. You can go through and watch all the audition tapes of the guys that are trying to get on. And I think back then that's kind of what it was. It was just a tape or a YouTube video or them seeing you in person. That's what it was. Slowly it started to transform into the fly to Vegas. We're going to watch you grapple. We're going to watch you hit mitts. Yeah, stuff like that. So it's kind of a weird process to try to evaluate how somebody can fight in that environment. But
I want to. These are the things too, though, like talking points or whatever. How they do the rounds, like things that to see them change things over time and this show evolve, and like, are you still? I would say like when Bryce was on was one of the last shows that I watched,
last season,
right? And I've stopped keeping up with it super consistently. Somewhere around like probably season 15 or something.
Outside of the Brazil and the Latin America seasons, I'm pretty sure I've seen every season.
Yeah,
I've seen the smashes. I've seen the one that was Canada versus Australia. I've seen all the ones that were made in America. So I've seen almost all of them except for the ones that are subtitled. That's the ones I haven't watched. The Brazilian ones and the Latin America ones that are subtitled throughout.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so what are your thoughts over how much it's changed over time? Like, because you can see the contrast.
Yeah. Well, we started getting into some of my favorite changes more towards probably, I'm trying to think of the first time they had to fight to get on the show. Probably like season 6 or 7 where they started making them. That I think was a big game changer because, like we talked about already, with guys going home, guys quitting in the middle of the season or leaving. So I think a lot of that got weeded out by making them fight just to get on the show.
I remember that. Yeah.
And it eliminated that evaluation period, which I think is, because we talk about here, they put them through all this crazy conditioning circuit and make them do all this running and stuff like that to evaluate how well they can fight. But how well of a barometer is that? How well can you fight just by watching someone hit mitts or wrestle or whatever? So by having them fight in the show, now you actually get to see in a cage, full MMA rules, what's he going to do? Like, how's he going to react? How's he going to do things? So I think that was one of the big positive changes, was making people fight to get on the show.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But like you talked about, the rounds, they go back and forth between 2 rounds and 3 rounds and all that, different stuff. But
yeah. I still can't think it because it's like you don't want Dana or someone else to be deciding that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't, it's like can't think of a better way to do it.
No.
So
You don't want it to be about marketability and things like that. You want it to be about who's actually the better fighter, which I think for this season going in was pretty close. I think if you would have told me season 1, episode 1, that Forrest and Diego were going to win, that's 100% believable. You can 100% see both of those guys coming out and winning their weight class. Yeah. I think they were 2 of the guys that were probably, I think Diego was 12-0 or something when the season started. So you would think that's a guy that you could think would win the whole season. So yeah. I think they did a pretty good job of getting the 2 best fighters out of this group to ultimately win the season.
So some standouts from season 1 in terms of people that you definitely followed, you kept up. And we've talked about that throughout, but yeah. I mean, man, it's like I said, this season was just jam-packed of guys.
It was a stacked season. It was a stacked season. You get Forrest, obviously, goes on a crazy win, beats Shogun, beats Rampage, becomes the light heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, just wild.
Then he was so sad when he lost to Rashad.
I know. Turn around, lose next fight.
Yeah.
But then you have Diego, like we talked about. Diego's 30-plus fights in the UFC, still fighting, now, multiple weight classes, multiple title shots. He's had title shot. Well, I think the only title shot he had was at 55, but he's been on the verge of a couple title shots.
Yeah.
You have Kenny, who goes again. I think he had like 17 or 18 fights. He had 3 different title fights. Yeah, 3 different title fights throughout his career.
Only 4 losses in the UFC.
3 of them were title fights. Yeah. That's only one time he lost. It wasn't a title fight.
Owns his own gym now.
Yeah, him and his brother own their own gym. Yeah. Then you get a guy like Koscheck, who again
only
20,
only 2 fights when he came on the show.
I know 2-0,
That's
2-0
crazy,
coming from
man.
that wrestling background.
Yeah.
But he ended up having like 20, 25 fights in the UFC, I think, something like that. Fought
Yeah.
George St. Pierre for the title. Was a coach later on on the Ultimate Fighter. Big time, that was
Lost
a big
his
deal.
last 6 fights.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that kind of held on too long. Should have retired sooner than he did.
Yeah.
Then we talk about Lieben his wild,
12-10 record.
yeah, good long UFC run. Now he's doing the bare knuckle thing. Still consistent.
Multiple fight or knockout of the night wins across his career. Like
I can
5 or
imagine.
something
Yeah,
like
some
that.
crazy amount of post-fight awards. You get Nate, who ends up getting hurt. We don't really get to see. That's the thing that sucks about the season. You don't get to see anything in Nate. You don't get to see what he can do, how he is. You see he's the kind of the calm.
Yeah, he was
Big
raised
brother
to have
voice.
Jehovah's Witness.
I know, it's
I was
crazy.
reading about that. I was like, oh yeah.
So he's like the calm older statesman of the whole season. Kind of
He
keeps
is.
everybody in check. And then, but even he has a good run after. Gets all the way to a middleweight title fight against Rich Franklin.
Yeah. Gets
knocked out, but he's at least gets a title fight.
Super quick, also.
Yeah. Who else? Bonner. Like we talked about Bonner. Bonner really is plagued by injuries throughout his UFC career. Just really can never.
Also test positive for steroids
Yep.
twice.
Yeah.
After the second Griffin fight and the Silva fight.
Yeah, he also runs into the buzzsaw that we all come to know now as Jon Jones. He was kind of the first victim of Jon Jones in the UFC.
I want to say that fight may have been on the same card where Diego fought BJ Penn. I was mentioning UFC 107.
It might have been. It was that time.
Like Jon Jones was suplexing his ass,
Spinning
like
back
belly to
elbow.
back. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Oof. Yikes.
Talk about Sam. Sam had, I think, 5 UFC fights.
Yeah, he had a few.
He loses to Rashad Machida. Those are 2 of his losses. So loses to respectable guys, but nothing real crazy. Bobby had that one shot in the UFC where he lost his decision to Sam, but he would go on to become light heavyweight Strikeforce champ, which is at the time Strikeforce was, top 2 or 3 organization in the world at that time. So he was doing well to win there. Sanford had, I think, 2 fights. That one fight in the UFC where he lost. Thacker. That 0-1 fight's the only fight I can even find for him. I don't even show him having fights before he got on the tough, so I don't even know how he really got on there.
Who was it? Season 1 who left because they're like, I can't take the pressure in the cameras.
That's season 2, yeah.
Okay,
the very beginning of season 2, yeah. Then we talked about Loden earlier, who ended up dying, but he had a pretty good run in the WEC after. He ended up becoming the light heavyweight champ in the WEC. Pretty good run for him. Swick is one of the craziest runs on here. 2 separate times ran all the way up to knocking on the door of a title shot at middleweight and welterweight, and ended up losing right before.
15 total fights in the UFC.
Yeah, beat guys like David Loiseau and Joe Riggs.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Schoenhauer. When he went on to he went to the IFL after he left Tough, so he had a pretty good run in the IFL, which is another fighting organization that
used to
wasn't
be at that time was
a pretty
legit,
big deal. Yeah. Alex Karalexis, again, another big WEC run. He went and had a pretty good run over in the WEC. And then Rafferty, he had that one UFC fight, was the only one he had, and then he kind of faded off after that.
Imagine what an experience like this did for these people's confidence.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah, to be picked out as one of the 16 best unsigned guys in the world or in the country.
Yeah, I think about some of the minimal experiences I've had, like going to Worlds for jiu-jitsu a few times, or training with Greg Jackson, or whatever it is. It's how oh man, that made an impact on my life. You know, okay, so in Vegas, when Hickson, his brothers tried to give him a red belt, which he declined. Yeah, it was very awkward. He wore it for one day. I have a picture with him, but. Just stuff like that, you're a part of, and changes your life in a way, imagine how much for this. I
can't even imagine.
I want to have some of these, I want to find actually some of the less famous contestants, or some of the less busy retired guys, and have them come on
just to talk about
just a Zoom meeting, and be look, tell me how this played into your life.
Because imagine being 20, I think Levin was 23, 24 years old, and hey, we're going to lock you in this house for the next 6 weeks with 15 other guys.
Don't jump over that wall.
No TV, no magazines, no music, and your guys are going to train together twice a day, and then you're going to fight each other. So yeah, just the saying it out loud sounds ridiculous. Why would anyone think this is going to work? Yeah,
for real. Well, let's start season 2, but I'm going to take a leak real quick.
Okay.
But man, I've never had a cortisone shot, but they gave me one. And like it helped immensely.
Oh, I bet.
Right? And I was just like, wow, but I'm still taking it super easy. Like they're like, don't do anything overhead.
Yeah, that's the scary part about that, because you feel great and then you go out and hurt yourself even worse because you're like, I didn't even feel it. It felt so good.
Like just like it's my left hand, so like I do a lot, but like holding mitts right now is.
Oh yeah, that's a rough on the shoulders anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Forced.
Yeah.
Dude, have you ever stood beside that guy?
No.
I've got to stand next to him at Vegas a couple of different times. Once in the trade show and once at some media scrum event they were having, and he's huge.
Well, I've stood next to Frank Mir, and I've heard Frank Mir talk about how him and Forrest Griffin are basically the same size. Like he talked about how he fought at heavyweight and Forrest fought at 205. He's like, we're the same size. I don't know how he made 205.
Yeah, yeah. Man, there were a bunch of guys around Vegas at that time, like Robert Drysdale, Frank Mir, Forrest.
Roy Nelson.
They were all training together.
Nelson was in that. I don't know if he was training with them or not, but I know he was in Vegas too.
Yeah. Man, I always liked that dude.
Roy Nelson.
Big country.
Yeah.
So, season 2, Hughes, Franklin, which they're not fighting each other.
No, they're, I guess, pretty much friends at this point. I guess they talk about how they're pretty friendly going in, but they're both super competitive.
Why do you think? I kind of felt like doing a little background that's like, okay, well, Franklin won against Shamrock on the finale, so that audience is familiar with him.
Yeah.
Hughes is already our golden boy. Let's get him in here, and then, you know. But I was like, as soon as they announced, I was like, well, Hughes and Franklin never fought each other, not in the same way. Like I just forgot that they had. Went that route.
Honestly, I don't think there was any clear title challenger to Hughes. I think if there had been another, I can think if George St. Pierre had been a little further along in his career, then they probably would have done those two. But I don't think there was anyone that they could really sell as a true threat to Hughes at that point. So they're like, well, we can't really put him with somebody in the mid welterweight division because there's nobody that we can bill as someone that might act like with Randy and Chuck. You're talking about, Chuck was a huge favorite going into the first fight. Randy beats him. So going into the second fight, there's a lot of drama there of who's going to win. I don't feel like they felt like they could have any kind of drama like that with Hughes because he'd been so dominant for so long. And so then I think Rich was kind of still new to the scene. There wasn't really a middleweight champion. That whole situation was still trying to get sorted out. So there was no real threats to to him either. So that's why they kind of stuck them together. Yeah. Like you said, they were two kind of guys that were very familiar, very big names in the sport. But they didn't really have any rivals to go against, so they just kind of stuck them together.
Well, too, Matt Hughes is a good choice, not just because of his stardom, but like he is in this show, like is abrasive.
Oh my gosh, right?
So much. And like
so.
I've been around him, like at a show one time, and I'm like, dude, you're a dick.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's just and I've heard a lot of people say that about him. I feel super bad for him now because of issues he's had overcoming with his train.
Yeah, I saw him just a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So he's in he's bad. I mean, he's not in bad shape. He's still getting around and doing stuff, but he's definitely not the same,
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's I've seen some. I haven't seen any updates on him in a few months. It's been probably 6 months or a year.
He was at one of our Poto shows not that long ago. The night Foster fought, he was there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he came down for that. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because like when he first had that accident, like his speech was affected and all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah, he was in really bad shape. They weren't for sure he's going to live for a long time. It was a real touch and go situation for a long time.
Yeah, and then I saw one like little segment about him, like how it was affecting like his family, like, and then like an article came out about it, and I was just like, oh. Man.
That's the thing that sucks about stuff like that is because then all these rumors start to come around and you don't know what's true, what's not, where they're getting any of this information. It's just and like he's in a coma. He can't really defend himself or say with this or that. It's just stuff comes out of the woodwork when you get in those kind of situations.
Yeah. So Franklin welterweights, George Grajell, Marcus Davis, the Irish hand grenade. Yeah. He really did go on to have a great career.
He did actually.
Anthony Torres, Melvin Guillard. He had a ton of UFC fights.
That was one of those guys. He came out of New Orleans with a ridiculous record before he even got into the UFC. He already had like 30 fights before he even got on Tough. Yeah. I think he was like 22 or 23. He's already had 30 fights.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then heavyweights on Franklin's team are Keith Jardine, Seth Petrozelli,
Who
has a notable win over Kimbo Slice.
Yeah, brought down an entire promotion with one punch.
Yeah. Well, then, too, so wasn't it Petrozelli that got his cauliflower ear punched and it exploded in a fight?
No, that was, I think it probably did happen to him, but I think the other one that it happened to was the Maximus guy. What's his name? The big British guy. Thompson. James Thompson?
I'm not sure.
In Pride. It happened to him in Pride. Or somewhere, but
this happened in like a lower level show, and I want to say it could have even been it could have been Kimbo who exploded somebody's ear, and that could be conflating it.
Put them together.
But this came up at some point in the season that he was having issues with his cauliflower ear, like in one of the fights.
Yeah, real towards the end.
Yeah. Also, Rashad Evans and Brad Imes.
Big Brad.
Yeah.
6'7"?
Yeah.
Giant dude. That's kind of the theme of this season was some giant heavyweight dudes.
Yeah. We'll get to them in a second. So Hughes, welterweights, you had Joe Daddy.
Mm-hmm.
I always liked him, dude, coming up.
I love Joe.
And his grappling was great. Josh Berkman, who is replaced with Jason Bonflew, correct?
Yep.
Sammy Morgan, and then Strange Luke Como.
Strange Luke, yeah. It's crazy. Sammy Morgan coming into this show already had wins over guys like Aaron Riley and Dwayne Ludwig before he ever got so tough. He'd already beat both of those guys. Yeah.
Wow. Dwayne, he's. I love watching Dwayne Ludwig.
I love watching too. Yeah.
I like him as a coach too. So heavyweights for Hughes, Mike Whitehead,
it's his homegrown guy.
Dan Christensen, Rob McDonald, and Tom Murphy. So was like Brian Foster going over to train with these guys at the Hit Squad, back in the day?
I don't know if he was training there yet at this point, because this was like 2006. So this is season 1 was January of 2005. I think it ended like June. So this is probably late 2005 when all this was happening. I don't know if he was at Hit Squad yet or not.
Yeah, but he did later. He did
later. Yeah. He did go to Hit Squad after that. Yeah, I know there's a picture of him from another season where Matt was on the Ultimate Fighter, was a coach on the Ultimate Fighter, where he had times where he had gone. So, but I don't know if he did for this season or not.
Yeah.
You talk about Dan Christensen. He had a win over Ben Rothwell before the Ultimate Fighter. That was kind of his big deal, and he ended up replacing Kerry Shaw.
Okay, yeah. Because Shaw gets out like right out
in
the
evaluation.
Gate.
Yeah, the evaluation, he tears his meniscus or his ACL or something in the evaluation process. Yeah.
Then also in the first episode, Eli Joslin leaves. Dude, that's the guy that was just
the camera
like,
guy.
I can't
handle the cameras.
It.
Yeah,
dude. Yeah, that's and then also in the very first episode, Joe Daddy can't make weight and forfeits his match. Right?
No, Kenny Stevens.
Kenny Stevens.
That's
okay.
So basically, what they did was they did the whole evaluation. I think it was like a 48-hour, 2-day evaluation. And at the end of it, they were going to send one guy home, the guy they thought was the weakest link of the entire show. Well, at that point, Eli had already quit, so they didn't have a heavyweight to send home. He'd already sent himself home, so they chose Kenny Stevens as the weakest welterweight.
Okay. Yeah.
But they told him, you can either go home or you can choose somebody to fight. And so he decided to fight Sam Morgan. He wanted to fight Sam Morgan, but he couldn't make weight. He couldn't make it to 170, so he ended up quitting before he ever even fought.
Okay,
and he ended up accepting it and going
I remember
home.
being confused on that when I was watching this show, too. I don't know if I was, like, distracted on my phone or something, but I was like, I believe it's Dana came in, was bitching about everybody at their weight, and it showed.
Oh, Joe, he was bitching about Joe's weight.
And I was like, oh.
Well, that was the thing. So season 1, we talked about how the guys didn't think they were going to fight, so a lot of them came in heavy and out of shape. So season 2, he's like, you guys should have known from the first season that when you got here that we were going to make you fight. So he was bitching about all of them, telling him, he's like, y'all all need to start cutting weight right now. Y'all all need to start getting ready to fight, like you're going to fight, like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And he called out Joe Daddy. He said, what did he say to Joe Daddy? You're like 190 pounds and you're 5'2", so you need to start cutting weight right now.
Yeah, that's why. So like I saw that speech and I conflated that. Yeah. So then Christensen does replace Shaw, who's out with the knee injury.
Yeah. Another big dude, 6'8" monster guy that comes in.
Hughes wins the challenge in the second episode, and then that leads to Berkman fighting Guillard, and that's where they have the 3
Melvin.
rounds.
Yeah. Which was I don't know. I think their thought was that Melvin was the most athletic guy on their team, and that if they could eliminate him, then they would be able to win the challenges, and then ultimately we get to pick all the fights. But man, it's a risky pick.
Yeah.
And which ultimately costs them.
Yeah. after the Guillard, Berkman has a broken arm.
Took a kick to the forearm, breaks his arm.
You ever? So I've never seen that happen live, but I know a couple of people that have, like in like kickboxing, Thai boxing fights. Have you ever seen somebody?
I've never seen it in person. No.
Okay, so ironically, it happened to Rich Franklin against Chuck Liddell, and another one-punch knockout in that situation too, like with Nate Quarry. But dude, apparently, and I've seen videos of this, like your arm is like,
oh yeah,
like it just falls off. It's like hanging there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a jacked up. But I hear people talking all the time about like flaring that so that doesn't, like, especially if you're blocking
framing and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But man, that is brutal.
Yeah,
to
that's a rough
think
one. And
about.
he fought, like, I think he got broken in the second round. So he fought, a round and a half with a broken arm, wrestling and punching and doing everything else. So
when his arm's broken, he leaves and he gets replaced with Von Flue, right?
Yeah, Jason Von Flue comes in. Yeah.
So I meant to look this up, dude, because it became a part of the culture somehow. You've heard of the Von Flue choke, right?
That's him, Jason Von Flue.
What's the story of it? I
he
forget
did it in a UFC fight on. I can't remember who but he did it in a UFC fight against somebody, and that's where it came from. Became known as the Von Flue choke.
We always joke, like Brandon Motley. We were at a fight one time, and we just like kept it a running joke. But like, there's this drunk dude, and like they're like standing up fighting, right? And Von Flue. All right, like
screaming it.
Yeah, and not like so. But what's wild is like that's a famous thing that everybody that does MMA, like you and I do MMA in Arkansas, and we both know about the Von Flue joke.
Yeah,
but he had a 1-2 record in the UFC.
Exactly. Yeah, that one win though.
Yeah,
one win. It's all it takes.
Oh man, that's wild.
Put that Von Flue choke down.
Yeah. So he replaced them in that same episode. Imes defeats Rob McDonald.
Yeah, that's him coming in is where you first start to see Matt's abrasiveness, as you put it, because he brutalizes Jason when he first comes to the show.
Yeah,
he comes from Chuck Liddell's team. He's trains with Hackelman and Chuck Liddell. He comes from the pit.
Interesting.
So I mean,
Hackelman's a wild dude. I've been around him a few times in Vegas at the trade show, and like he taught like this little like. How to run your gym type seminar I went to, and he was like, the owner of Century Martial Arts was in there, and he was like, kata, it's stupid, we don't do it. He's like, Mike Dillard, he's here, he does kata, it's okay that you do kata, but I don't do it. Like he's like trying to, and he's like, Mike Dillard, because like the dude, he's like giving him the spot to say that, and he's like, but Mike Dillard's like this Chuck Norris black belt famous martial artist from like decades of doing traditional martial arts.
Calling him out in the middle of his speech.
Yeah, and he's like, it was funny. It was just a funny thing, but he was like, I'll tell you what. Self-defense is not getting poked in the eye by Gustafson. Because Glover was in the room, and he was like, Glover couldn't drive for 2 weeks.
That's funny.
Yeah. He's like, you got to train that stuff. The fouls,
all the groin strikes.
Yeah, but now Hackelman has produced. I mean, Glover, Chuck Liddell. That's interesting. I didn't know. That
Banuelos too. What is it? That guy was in the WC. Banuelos was another guy. He had.
Yeah. He fought Miguel Torres in the UFC. One of Miguel Torres' few fights in the UFC, he fought.
That was back on the show. Was the Tap Out show? Where they went around and they picked up.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You ever see those?
Yeah.
Cerrone was on there too. They put Cerrone on that show.
Wow, it's just so much blast from the past with this.
I know
stuff.
It's crazy. Yeah, with all the throwbacks.
It's gonna be like that when I do this Walker Texas round.
No, it's gonna be the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, anything else in episode 3 that's notable?
I'm trying to think. 3. Not really. Brad Woods gets a triangle choke win over. This is again talk about the Matt.
Round 1.
The Matt being kind of abrasive. He basically sends Rob in there to lose. I mean, really, he really basically says that he doesn't care if Rob wins or not because he doesn't really like Rob. He thinks Rob's a whiner. So he says, really, this is a win-win situation for me. Either Rob does something and wins, or I get rid of a whiner. So,
is this the one? Let's see. What episode is it where Joe Daddy does the monkey in the tree for like 1,000 revolutions around?
Oh no, that's later on in the season.
That's later.
That's one of the challenges later. Yeah.
Yeah, man. That that was a drill that we did all the time when I came up training because of that episode.
We used to do it for fun. We should try to see if we could do it for fun back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. It was. That was exactly. It was fun. But and I remember when I got to be able to where I could do it. It was always a challenge though.
So then we get to where strategy starts to be played. Kind of in this episode is where they're all kind of picking out who they want to fight and who wants to fight who. And this is where George starts telling everybody he wants to fight Jason. He wants Von Flue for his fight. And Team Franklin wins the challenge. And their master plan is to send Marcus Davis in to fight Joe Daddy.
Yeah.
The best boxer they have to fight the best grappler on the entire show.
Didn't make a lot of sense.
No.
And then Davis does he tap out to strikes?
I think so. Yeah, he gets caught in the crucifix. Remember, he gets caught in the crucifix and gets obliterated till the referee stops the fight.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. Man, I need to go back. I can't remember who he was fighting, but it's always stuck out in my mind. It was a UFC fight, Joe Stevenson. Like, butterfly swept a dude, but then dropped him back into a guillotine.
Oh.
And it was just... he was really trying, got the dude a third of the way going on the sweep and was hump.
Caught it on the way back.
But he has a few guillotine wins.
He's got the way he's built, he's got to have a squeeze an unbelievable squeeze. I'm sure you pop your head off your shoulders.
I'll say another guy, then the training with him, but also seeing wins of him in grappling tournaments and the WC was Miguel Torres.
Oh, I can imagine.
That dude's choke was insane.
He's got those long arms that once he gets them around you, it's...
Yeah, Caleb's like that with Inferno. Yeah. He has bony ass.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, blades for
he's
arms.
Slicing your throat as he's choking you.
Yeah. Yeah. Miguel also, I remember he was the first guy I saw that. You remember that choke that Randy Couture's wife got choked unconscious with, the leg scissor choke?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He taught that at that seminar.
Yeah. I've seen a couple guys teach that, off the Kimura. They got the Kimura grip and
Yeah.
That, what's it, David Avalon, the Kimura trap guy? He's big on that scissor, that leg scissor.
I like it. I'm a little you teach it to beginners and then they try and pinch everybody's head off.
Yeah. You're all right, guys, listen, this is not...
You didn't have it. Just let go and do something else. Yeah. You still have the Kimura. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Go to your knees. Yeah.
Okay, so after that, Stevenson handily defeats Davis, and then that's the next episode is when you start to see Matt get into it with Rashad.
Yeah, yeah, and he starts giving George a hard time. Remember, he starts calling George a coward and giving him a hard time for not fighting,
Yeah, but that's when, it's interesting to see. That's when you see Rashad doing the showboating, which when we were talking about Forrest earlier, there's Rashad on your computer, I think.
Yeah.
We're talking about Forrest earlier. I remember him showboating in the Forrest fight.
Yeah.
And it pissed me off. I was just don't treat Forrest that way.
Yeah.
But and that really rubs some people the wrong way.
It does, yeah. And
getting bitch slapped by Nick Diaz, right?
I'm sure, that's probably also upsetting. But I feel like Hughes really kind of had it out for Rashad from the beginning. He really talked kind of bad about him in the evaluation, about how he was out of shape and he thought he didn't have any heart and he thought he was kind of going to be a quitter, and he kind of says more of the same stuff going into this fight too. So I feel like there was a little bit of already animosity there beforehand, and then that just kind of added to it.
Yeah, but Rashad wins. Rashad fights, 3 times?
Yeah, I think
three times
across the season,
and ends up in the last fight, Hughes is in his corner.
Yeah, has to corner him, It's pretty wild.
They kind of make
circle.
Up.
Make the full circle,
Yeah, it's funny how Hughes is. He's like, yeah, I'm a fucking asshole because of this reason. He has it all justified. He's like, but
it's crazy if you watch this season and then later seasons, the way Hughes' attitude changes, the way he's kind of different, but he's kind of the same as we kind of go through the years. But he pretty much calls Rashad out, tells him that he's glad he never picked him, glad he's not on his team, and then like you said, they have to make up kind of later in the season.
Yeah. Okay. After that, so Hughes wins 2 challenges in a row: a heavyweight challenge, a welterweight challenge, and then that's when Von Flue fights.
Well, this is your Scarecrow challenge right here. This is your episode. Episode 6 is where we come to Scarecrow, which is, to me, the smartest thing Rich Franklin did probably the whole season. So, for people that don't know, basically Mike Whitehead has to stand in this position where he's got his arms behind his head and he's kind of basically semi-squatting for the whole time, and Joe has to do these revolutions completely around his body without touching the ground and without Mike really supporting any of his weight. So it has to be him. And I think what they end up doing, like 200 over like an hour and 40 minutes.
Most people can't do one.
Yeah, most people can't do one. So Rich just sits back and lets him do this for an hour and 45 minutes and then decides to forfeit at the end of the challenge and says, cool, well, you guys win, and walks away.
Yeah, I remember seeing that when that happened and being like, what?
Yeah.
Like, that was the first time I saw season 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I was just like, what? That was so crafty.
It
Good
was
job.
so, yeah, I must say, it was so good. Because, I mean, it destroys Whitehead and Joe both. I mean, you can tell as soon as they stop doing it, you can tell both of them basically just collapse and they're just...
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're just
beat to
drenched in
Yeah.
sweat. Jeez, I can't imagine how sore you would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the scarecrow. I forgot that's what they called it. We always called it monkey in a tree for some reason.
Yeah.
So, but then it's in that episode, Von Flue fights Grajell.
Yep, Grajell gets what he wants. He
Yeah.
finally gets to fight the guy he wants to call, or forget he wanted to call out.
Yeah, and beats him.
No,
Right?
Jason wins.
Jason Von Flue,
beats-
yes,
Jason wins.
he
He
wins.
loses. Yeah, George calls him out and then gets
Yeah.
beat.
Yeah, George Grajell, he was an interesting character on the
He
show.
was. He was very. He was funny because at the way they got under his skin so easily, they kind of just kind of poked fun at him, and he couldn't handle it. But
Yeah. Then
he was Rich's best friend, right? Remember that was kind of the
yeah,
storyline of that.
yeah.
Matt had Mike and Rich had George. So
that was the connection. Yeah.
yeah.
Let's see. Von Flue after that gets sent over to Franklin's team, right?
Well, he
And
has to have
then-
all the stitches in his face. Remember, he gets cut up pretty bad in the fight. So again, we're back to wondering whether or not he's going to be able to fight because he's got all these cuts. But yeah, he ends up getting sent to Franklin's team because now they've lost two of their middleweights, so they got to even the teams back up.
Then in that episode's when Petrozelli defeats Dan Christensen.
Yep, Big Dan. This is also where Jason's very upset because Matt kind of acts like he doesn't really care that Jason won. He's not supportive, I guess, of him after the win. So Jason kind of feels like he's a little left out.
Yeah.
But yeah, Seth ends up fighting
a lot
Big
of
Dan.
decisions so far. You got two finishes halfway through the season, but all the rest are decisions. Four decisions.
Yeah.
This was one that I enjoyed. KOTOR, the boxing numbers challenge.
Yes, that's hilarious.
I love number drills like that.
The challenge that lasted all of about 45 seconds.
Yeah, like the dude is just like paused,
Just
and they're like,
freezes.
"We don't
They're
know
all-
if you did it right, dude."
They're all just staring at him, waiting to finish, waiting to see what he's going to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so funny. That's one thing I do enjoy about what Collie and stick fighting I've done is like that it's a lot of numbers.
Yeah, it's like
right?
sequences like that.
It's sequences and patterns of beats and stuff, but it's also like high, low, high and stuff like that, which you do with your jab or whatever. But it's like the Inosanos, they have a numbering system, like 17 angles.
Oh,
right?
That's great.
And then for like the empty hand Filipino stuff they do, he has like a 30 punch numbering system. Mike Tyson, they use several numbering systems, but one of them was an 8 punch numbering system.
Yeah.
Right, the Customanos guys, but I just found Boss Rutan uses and Dwayne Ludwig use the 1 through 4 numbering system. We do too for kickboxing. So, yeah, I thought that was a cool challenge. I like Randy.
that was pretty.
Randy probably trains his guys that way.
I'm sure. Yeah, because a lot of these. Yeah, that's kind of one thing we didn't talk about. Randy is the guy that designs all the challenges for season 2, so that's kind of their way of bringing him back in.
Wow, great.
They bring him in as the challenge coordinator or whatever you want to say.
Yeah. So in that episode, Franklin sends Imes over to Team Hughes, and then Como fights Anthony Torres and wins in a 3-round decision.
Yeah.
Anything else before episode 9?
Oh no, he didn't. No, yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. He had that crazy front kick to the face right at the end of the round, but yes, Torres survives. No, not really. It's a pretty good fight back and forth, but Luke showed. Now at this point, everybody's talked about how weird Luke is and how he has all these crazy, ticks and whatever. But he ends up showing everybody that he can fight. He's the last pick.
What did he do after he won? Didn't he like eat all this terrible
he went
food?
on ice cream binge.
Me.
Yeah.
Yeah. because usually people that are into super weird shit like he was into don't do like they don't cheat like that or whatever. It's about like the higher level of like that's how I was perceiving him.
For him to be
like
but
he's a vegan or something.
Yeah, he goes off the rails there for a. Well, I guess one night basically is what he said. He's going to eat as much junk food as he can in one night and then be back to normal the next day.
Yeah. Dude, I will say I was talking to Edward about this for this weekend because he's like, dude, after weigh-ins, I'm going to eat this. I was like, yeah, dude, you hadn't had anything like that in quite a while.
You need to chill a little bit, yeah.
Maybe you should have been a little lighter, a little closer to what you've been eating. Maybe some salmon.
Yeah.
Like just like giving him, he's like, I'm going to do the hugest steak and mashed potatoes. Yeah. And I was like, Anyway.
I want an entire cake.
Yeah. Oh man, I remember one time a dude that we used to train with. He was weighing in for fights, and he's like, "I want my dessert first." Like he's like, "You put it on this table first,
right now."
Oh, it was hilarious. In episode 9, Hughes, there's a challenge. Hughes wins. Evans. This is the one. Where Hughes gets super fired up.
Yeah. He talks Mike up the whole episode about how great Mike is and how Mike moved to Iowa to train with him. And
wasn't it like didn't they have like a shit practice and like Mike Whitehead like motivates everybody, gives a speech and stuff.
He talks about how he's in the best shape on his entire team, even out of the welterweights, and says he's the best heavyweight here, hands down. He's definitely the best heavyweight here. Yeah, so they can pick out Rashad because they think Rashad's the weak link on the other team.
Yeah, and it's a 3-round war, right?
It's not a war, but it's 3 rounds.
Yeah, the last 10 seconds. Well, yeah, that guy he just goes.
Rashad beats him up for 15 minutes basically. He doesn't really do anything throughout the entire fight.
And the last 10 seconds, he literally is walking away.
Yeah,
like he gets
10-second clock, so he just turns around, puts his hand on his hips, and walks away. Yeah, Matt Hughes throws the water bottle out of the cage.
Yeah, like hits a wall up there.
Gives him the hard Vaseline across the forehead.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that was a wild one. Yeah, Hughes was pissed. And then that's when Whitehead's like, I'm done fighting.
Yeah, that's when he said he was done forever. And so at this point, now we're going into the semifinals, right? We're down to the last ones. And at this point, if you realize it or not, Rich Franklin has won every single heavyweight fight, and Matt Hughes has won every single welterweight fight. They're both 4-0 in the 2 different weight classes.
Interesting. I didn't
all the heavyweights left were originally on Team Franklin, and all the welterweights left were originally on Team Hughes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, I didn't keep up with that.
Yeah.
So in that next episode, Kumo fights again.
Yep.
Wins again, second round. I don't remember anything else.
Who are we talking?
Episode 10. That's when Whitehead's at the beginning. Beginning of that episode is he's like, that's the little clip where he's like, I'm done fighting. I'm just like, I guess I'm not a fighter. Like
this is where they bring them all in and ask them who's going to fight who. They set the semifinals. They ask them all who they want to fight, and they end up deciding that for the semis, Luke's going to fight Sam Morgan, who hasn't fought at all this entire season, and Jason's going to fight Joe Daddy.
Yes.
For the welterweights. And then in the heavyweights, they end up putting
Evans and Jardine.
Yeah, Keith and Rashad against each other, which they're friends trained together back home and at Albuquerque. And then they put Seth with Brad because Seth said he likes to fight the big guys.
Yeah. So have you ever read, or do you have copies of Greg Jackson's books?
I have one of them, The Ground Game.
Yeah, it's got Rashad and Keith and GSP on the front.
What's his name? Charlie. What's his name? No, not Villanueva. What's his name?
Who is
Villasenor? Charlie Villasenor?
I don't know.
I think
we'll pull it off the shelf in a minute. But yeah, it's got like all those guys from this era.
Yeah,
that trained
as he's using them to demonstrate.
Yeah, I want to say even like in the photography in the book, like cowboys being used with Winklejohn or Greg Jackson. I guess it would have been Greg Jackson. I don't
think they don't. Yeah, they don't get along. They're not friendly. So this is what you talked about before. They end up having to flip a coin to decide who's going to corner who because, again, all the guys in the heavyweight division are Rich's guys and all the welterweights are Hughes' guys. So that's how we end up having Luke and Rashad get cornered by Matt, and then Sam and Keith end up getting Rich as their cornerman going into the semifinals.
And Evans wins a 3-round decision over Keith.
Yep.
And then Stevenson gets a quick armbar over Von Flue.
Yeah, and Luke Kumo sleeps Sammy Morgan in the second round.
Yeah. And then Imes beats Petrozelli.
Yeah, Petrozelli's pretty much winning, dominating the fight, and then gets exhausted.
Yes.
Starts complaining about his ear. Starts getting tired, and he ends up getting. I think he gets submitted, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's the ear thing.
He gets whining and complaining that his ear hurts.
But man, we'll have to look that up after
Yeah.
the podcast because I'm almost positive he got punched in the ear and his cauliflower exploded.
Oh, I'm sure I remember it being a big thing
in a different promotion.
Oh yeah, for after that
later.
Yeah,
right? Because when he said his cauliflower ear, like I just had like I want to say that's why I knew his name other than the Kimbo fight, but it could have been Kimbo that
it might have been. I'm not sure.
Punched his cauliflower.
Well, no, because that fight only lasted like 30 seconds. I think that was one of those ones that was like a very quick knockout for Seth. So now we get our our finals now. So Big Brad is going to end up fighting Rashad for the heavyweight final, and Joe Daddy's going to fight Luke Kumo, who ends up being the last pick as the welterweight final.
And also on that card, you have Diego. You remember when Nick Diaz fought, and he had those 3 really close decision losses in the UFC, and he ends up leaving after from Joe Riggs and Diego and somebody else.
Is it Caro Parisian?
I think so.
Yeah.
Right before the pain pills.
Yeah, this is that deal. But also Keith Jardine fights Kerry Shaw after Kerry comes back from his injury.
Yeah,
he ends up beating him by the leg kicks. Ends up stopping him with leg kicks.
You know who else Keith really annihilated with leg kicks and won? Chuck Liddell.
Yeah, he battered Liddell's leg.
That's a notable win for sure. I remember watching that fight. That was right around the time that Vanderlei came to the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. And it just blew me away that Keith Jardine beat Chuck Liddell and did it strategically.
That's what we're talking about, that anomaly that's Keith Jardine, where he would beat these super high-level guys that you thought he should not be beating, and then he would get knocked out by Houston Alexander in his next fight, and you're like, what happened?
Yeah, Houston Alexander, that dude was wild. He got in a couple wild fights, man.
Who else? So Melvin comes back and ends up TKOing Marcus Davis.
Yeah.
Marcus gets beat.
What's wild is Marcus loses in the house, loses on the finale, goes on to have a good career in the UFC.
Well, he ended up leaving the UFC had a couple fights outside, and then he comes back and goes on this crazy 18 fight run.
Yeah, let's see. He has a 22-11 record. Last MMA fight was in 14, 9-6 record in the UFC with total 15 fights.
Yeah, so he comes back and has a really good showing.
47 now.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Berkman comes back, KOs Sam, picks Sam up, slams him, knocks him out. Kenny Florian fights on this show. His first.
Yeah, Kit Cope.
Yeah, submits Kit Cope. Then we end up talking about our 2 finale fights. We already talked about Diego beating Nick Diaz by decision.
Yeah. You said Stevenson. He beats Luke Como.
He beats Kumo by decision, which was a big surprise for a lot of people. A lot of people thought that Stevenson would be able to take Luke down and really dominate him, but Luke really surprised a whole lot of people with his jiu-jitsu and his ground game, and clearly had the advantage on the feet, but Joe Daddy wasn't about to play that game. He just kept taking him down.
Yeah. Guillard goes on to have 22 fights in the UFC, 9 of them losses.
He's another one of those guys that's an anomaly. I think at one point in time he was ranked 6th or 7th in the world.
When he fights in he fights in Bellator, Rising, and World Series after that.
After that, yeah.
I think he had a bit of a cocaine problem.
I wouldn't be surprised.
He did.
He was
a couple of
person.
times he got popped for cocaine.
He was a wild man. Rashad ends up beating Brad Imes by split decision, which ended up being an insane fight back and forth, much like the Bonner Griffin fight. It was just a wild, crazy back and forth exchanges throughout, which again was kind of surprising because a lot of people thought Rashad would just take Brad down and play it safe because Brad was so big, but they ended up having a lot of really good exchanges, and I'm pretty sure Rashad knocked him down 2 or 3 different times in the fight with punches. So
yeah. Man, Rashad lost his last 5 fights in the UFC.
Again, man, holding on too long.
Yeah, and last time I saw anything from Rashad, he's like, man, I just took these psychedelic drugs, and now my life is on track.
He's
all
same thing
about
with
the
Dean Lister,
he's all about.
He's a vegan. He's all about the shrooms, everything else. Yeah.
Wow.
I saw him on Joe Rogan's podcast not that long ago.
Oh, Rashad was on Joe Rogan?
Yeah, not that long ago. Well, it might have been a year ago.
I haven't seen him on.
Yeah, he was on there, but they were talking about
man, I haven't been
DMT
watching
and everything else.
Joe's podcast.
I just watched the one with the Undertaker.
I saw clips for that, but since he left YouTube, man, and I have Spotify. I use it here at the gym every day.
Yeah.
But I just don't watch podcasts. I need to get my shit together.
Yeah.
It's wild too how Spotify has a video now.
Yeah, you can watch the video. I watched the video of it, but him and the Undertaker was a good one.
Yeah, I need it. Well, I had started on Spotify after the transition was listening to all the Lex Friedman episodes.
Oh yeah,
man, I like that dude.
Yeah.
You ever listen to him? He's like an MIT researcher, but he's kind of nerdy, but he's super smart. And he'll you'll ask him a question, and he'll be like
he has to think long and hard about it before he answers.
Yeah, there's like long pauses, and he's like, "This is why I value our relationship. It's these interactions right here." And then he just will give you the most insightful answer, but he's so just deep. Lex Friedman.
That's the crazy thing about Joe Rogan's podcast is he'll have that guy, but then he'll also have Theo Von, who's like, dude, last weekend I was doing cocaine. I got locked out of my apartment. Just the one extreme to the other.
Yeah, I know, dude.
Theo Von, dude, that cracks me up.
Oh, man, I really enjoy. I was listening to some clip of him the other day talking about being a sex addict.
Yeah.
And, telling all these crazy stories about.
He's a nut, man.
Oh, I do love Theo Von, though. Bryce Mitchell was on his podcast.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh, I can imagine
Bryce has been
together.
on this podcast, too. So.
I can only imagine them two together. Their conspiracy theories they come up with.
They were drinking Pedialyte together.
Oh,
like Bryce is like, yeah, this is what we do. We drink Pedialyte.
Oh, man, that's funny.
Let's see.
Okay, so post-tough, Sam Morgan, who was kind of really one of the favorites going in. Like I said, he had a couple big wins. He had a really good record. Ends up going 3-6 afterwards. Only 0-2 in the UFC. Rob goes 1-2 in the UFC afterwards. Tom actually comes back and wins 1-0 in the UFC, then retires. You never hear from him again. He's just gone out of the whole scene.
What were you saying about Whitehead? What does he do post?
Oh man, Whitehead. He actually went on a really good run in just other promotions. 18-4 post tough.
Wow.
0-1 in the UFC. Only got one shot in the UFC and lost, but he was 18-4 outside the UFC.
Wow.
Then he ends up in prison.
Shit.
Did you not know? You ever heard the sexual assault?
No.
Whole deal. He sexually assaulted his girlfriend or fiance or something at the time. Ends up spending some time in prison.
Damn.
Yeah, that was post tough. I was 5 or 6 years, I think, after the deal, but there was a big deal about that, big article about him going to, having to go to prison.
Dude, I constantly wonder about, getting hit in the brain a lot and that being
CTE
connected
thing.
to bad decision making.
Yeah.
Not saying that there's but there are some. I think there's some correlation there.
Oh yeah, boxers, NFL players,
Well,
MMA fighters.
Sugar Ray Robinson. If you look back at his career, that dude had so many fights, but in his later life, he started going off the deep end. He started being a fucking asshole too, and
sure.
he there were notable changes in his personality that started taking place, and he wasn't necessarily old.
Yeah.
When they started happening, I want to say he was in his 40s.
Yeah, so
Yeah, but it was happening while, and he was still active fighting as well. Right? There's a documentary. It was on HBO, is where I saw it, but about Sugar Ray Robinson.
It's crazy to think those guys still get licenses and stuff like that. That
Dude.
nobody stands up and goes, "Hey guys, maybe we should consider calling it quits."
Did you read that recent article about Spencer Fisher?
I have. I saw that stuff.
Yeah, I read it to the sparring class the other day.
Did you?
I was just like, hey, I want to read you guys something.
Yeah, something you guys need to hear as we start our sparring.
They were
today.
because it's like Edwards super trained hard for his fight,
trying to kill each other out there.
I'm just like, hey guys, who's heard of Spencer Fisher? And they're like, yeah, that guy's awesome. I'm like, yeah, he used to be.
Yeah, he doesn't know his name right now, but
or his kids' names according to this.
Yeah, so here's the deal we talk about. We talk about all these post-fight guys. You have guys like Berkman, who ends up, I think, going 15-15 when it's over. He got beat by Fitch and Carl Parisian late in his career. We talk about Melvin, who ends up going all the way up to top 10 spot as a lightweight, all the way to top 10 contender, possible fighting for the title before he kind of goes off the end. Gets beat by Lozon, Jim Miller, and we pretty much learn that he has no submission defense. Basically, what kind of happens in that situation. We talk about Jardine, who again goes from the highest of highs, beating Liddell, knocking out Forrest Griffin, to getting beat by
one of the
Houston
most disappointing
Alexander.
fights I've ever seen in my whole life, dude.
Yeah.
I remember the first time because I didn't see it live. I didn't see it when it first happened. But it's after I'd become a huge fan of Forrest Griffin.
Yeah.
And I found out he lost to Keith Jardine, and I watched it, and I was just crushed.
Yeah, it was too, because he was on his run to. A lot of people thought he was on his run to win a world title, and then he gets knocked out by Jardine, and you're like, well, that kind of hit the reset button on that.
Yeah. Yeah, for real.
And then you talk about Joe. Joe Lozon goes on, gets a lightweight title shot against BJ Penn. Ends up losing.
That's the meme.
That's the meme. The crying bloody face meme.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man, that 16 fights in the UFC for him. Eight losses. That fight was in 08, but here he beat Gleason Tebow.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that dude's fucking yoked, man.
He beat Nate Diaz too, didn't he?
Nate Diaz, Spencer Fisher,
Spencer
and
Fisher,
also Guillard and Kurt Pellegrino.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember the Kurt Pellegrino fight.
Those are all notable.
Also, big time lightweights, especially for that time.
And then we got Von Flue here with 14 and 12 overall. Released from Strikeforce, hasn't fought since a bunch of independent promotions in 09. But Von Flue, we know it about. We're a drunk redneck in Arkansas. We don't fight, and we know about it.
We know Von Flue. And then you get Rashad, who ends up going on. So, like we talked about, knockout.
Yeah,
Liddell.
That was right after I'd first started training. I've been training. It was like the first year I was training. We watched the fights at the Inferno in Clarksville, and I'll never forget Rashad knocking him out.
Liddell, starched him.
And then too, well, then actually, now I could be confusing when Liddell got knocked out with Rampage.
Oh yeah,
which was around the same time.
Close, yeah. That was when Liddell was getting knocked out a lot. Then,
but damn, that hook.
Yeah, and then he knocks out Griffin, becomes a light heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah,
turns around, loses to Machida.
Yeah, that is true. I was looking at that today, and I was like, "What?"
Yeah,
like it blew my mind.
Yeah, both of them win the title and then turn and lose it in the next fight. And then we talk about the Jones thing. He gets another title shot later in his career against Jones. Ends up losing a decision to Jones.
Wow.
And those are really his two major title shots for his career.
Yeah.
But so far, you get two guys, both, one heavyweight, one light heavyweight, win the show, go on to become champion in the UFC. One of them actually beats the other one to win the title. Season 2 champ beats the Season 1 champ to win the title.
That is impressive. I was reading earlier, too, that I think Chris Lieben was the first guy to fight in a 5-round fight that was a non-title fight.
Yeah.
And who was it? I read this, too. I didn't write it down, though. One of the who was the first tough contestant to ever get a title fight? It was one of these early guys.
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
Wasn't Forrest, because there was a considerable amount of time that had passed.
I can't remember. Wait, was it Kenny? I can't remember if it was Kenny or not.
I can't remember.
Because Kenny fought Shirk, remember, for the title before BJ came back.
Yeah.
So it might have been Kenny. Kenny might have been the first one, maybe.
Yeah. Could have been.
Yeah. I know that was pretty early before BJ came. Because I know Joe got his, but he got it against BJ. I know Kenny got one before then because he got it against Shirk when the title was vacant.
Yeah.
So it might have been Kenny.
I'll have to man, I came across so much cool trivia.
Dude,
and I knew
so
that
stuff.
And you do. I was like, man, I don't need to write everything down. You're going to have tons of cool stuff that you've come up with, too. But, too, I'm sure that these podcasts will get better as we go on. We're just making it up right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, that's the thing about it. The later seasons, there's so much more information. This was 2005 was really kind of, I mean, the internet was a thing, but it wasn't like it is now. Now you can find anything about anybody on the internet. Back then it was kind of like talking about Jason Thacker, falls off the face of the planet. You never see him, hear from him again. You don't know anything about him, Chris, there's a lot of these guys that you never see or hear from once the Ultimate Fighter's over. That doesn't happen now today. It's like no matter where you go now, they're going to find you. They're going to, write an article about you or something. So
before we get into season 3, where would you rank? So like season 2 is my least favorite of the 3 that we're talking about.
Yeah, mine too.
Okay, yeah,
I'm with you.
I just felt like there were a few. There were fewer standouts. I felt like the third round thing didn't work. I was like some of those fights. Yeah,
I think one of those things is heavyweights. I think when you have this many heavyweights in a thing,
that's a great point.
They're thing about heavyweights is at any point in time throughout the fight you could get knocked out. So I think a lot of the heavyweight guys were fighting kind of safe because they were afraid of that. They were afraid of getting clipped or hurt. So if you look at the heavyweight fights, I think Brad had 2 finishes by submission. Did anybody else get a finish in the heavyweight division? I think all the rest of them were decisions. I mean, pretty much through the whole season.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things, that I want to stood out to me.
That Brad Imes guy just lives over in Missouri.
Yeah, he's from Springfield originally. That's where he came from. I don't know if he's still there now, but that's where he was when he was on the show.
Yeah. Yeah. See, it would be cool to chase down some of these dudes to this podcast
Yeah.
and just be like, "Hey, dude, we do.
Well, see, he
we did
ended
a
up moving-
podcast about you, bro."
He went back to Iowa with Imes and Mike Whitehead after the show ended to train for the Rashad fight. He went back. He had Mike Whitehead and those guys in his corner when he fought Rashad on the Ultimate Fighter finale. So
Interesting.
yeah, so he kind of went back because back then they had Tim Sylvia and Mike White. They had some big heavyweight guys over there for him to train with at the time. So
yeah, interesting.
yep.
So I did enjoy season 3. Like, I just wrapped that up this week.
Yeah, I did. Season 3 brought a lot of changes to the Ultimate Fighter when season 3 started.
Yeah.
So they announced pretty much straight from the beginning. There's no more challenges. We're done with that. There's not going to be any challenges anymore. We're going to do away with that. They also announced that everybody's going to fight. Nobody's going to make it because at this point we saw Sam Hogger and Sam Morgan both make it all the way to the semifinals without ever fighting ever.
Yeah.
And so Dana pretty much says that's not happening anymore. Everybody's going to have to fight in a preliminary fight, and we're going to do this completely tournament style from now on. And it kind of really changes things.
That's it. You start seeing brackets.
You start to see the brackets seasons, and all that stuff comes. This time they end up having, which, I'm trying to think outside of maybe Rashad and Rampage, it's probably the most heated rivalry in tough history. There's not a whole lot of others that really rival Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz. These two guys absolutely hate each other. Had already fought once before. Tito beat Kenny, Tito beat Ken pretty bad. Another big change is they let them pick their own coaches, which is a very big theme for this season. Yeah,
it was because freaking Shamrock chooses who does
Dan
he
Friedman.
have? And Roman Polak.
Yeah, Roman Polak. Yeah, so you get Tito brings in Saul Solis and Dean Lister, who at the time were two of the best coaches in the world as far as grappling and striking coaches.
Dude, real similar stuff about Dean Lister coming out is like Spencer Fisher, man.
I believe.
And like maybe with Rashad too, because like there was some like Vice special about Dean Lister eating mushrooms and saying super stereotypical woke shit.
Maybe they're together. Maybe they're hanging out.
But hats off to him for trying to do something. And he's like, I stopped drinking. Like, man, people when they're suffering from mental illness, from disease, like you will self-medicate,
reevaluate your whole life, like every little thing about it that
Yeah, but it is wild how you like he was saying that like he became an alcoholic as like a means to an end, of like just like, oh, I got into that, like that wasn't a normal behavior, and like now I'm dependent on it. But
crazy.
It's like to curb the symptoms of CTE or whatever he's doing.
Pain, just being in pain. When you're doing jiu-jitsu and stuff like at the level that these guys were doing for that long, I can't imagine what your body feels like. My body feels like I'm 100 now, and I can only imagine training every single day with some of the best fighters in the world.
I know, dude. It's been bothering me about the shoulder because I just cannot do what I want right now. And like even if I want to roll, like I probably shouldn't do that. Yeah. And I was like, dude, there's a devolved before I saw the ortho again to like where I was like, if I would roll, I would, and it was a like white blue belt, I'd roll with my hand in my belt. I'm just like, and I would still beat their ass and be like, ha ha ha, that's what you get.
Yeah. Trying to attack me when I'm weak.
Yeah. Like it is fun sweeping somebody with one hand.
Yeah.
Like
Zane used to do that to me all the time. Zane used to make me grapple people when I had to put my hands behind my back and stuff
blindfolded.
like that. Yeah. I do that all the time anyway.
Close my eyes.
It's good. I've had Zane yell at me in the middle of a fight that I'm allowed to open my eyes in fights. So
yeah, it's I will say even ground and pound on the ground. Like everything there's so much like this room. This like especially when I'm done, it'll just be sensory like
overload all the time.
And it like when you are like especially training in the gym or like you're on the canvas and there's lights and a big audience, like I actually think the lights do a little bit of a service because you can't see
it kind of blocks out outside the cage.
So but that's kind of like being on stage, like you can see, like I see y'all out there, I can't really see you, but oh my god,
I know you're there. I
see these lights are helping you see me. So
another big change for this one is they bring in the Brits. First season we see guys from Britain come in.
What does Dana say? And like one of the last episodes, he's like, "Thank God for
Mother England or something."
Yeah, that was funny. Too, I thought it was interesting that Ortiz they provided a interpreter.
Oh yeah, that was
for Matt
through
Hamill.
the season. Yeah.
You know, Widespread Panic, like almost all these posters in here from the same band.
Yeah.
A bunch of weird old dudes. But they have this lady, and I would like to have her on the podcast. Her name's Edie Jackson, and she signs at a lot of their shows. And I've seen her sign at like 3 of their shows.
That's pretty cool.
It is. It's the stuff you wouldn't think about, but like you could see some of the complications Matt Hamill was having.
Oh yeah.
With training.
Well, and they were talking about him being too hard and doing, I mean, that's part of that is, I hear the whistle, I stop. He doesn't hear anything. He's still going, So, it was a big deal. I think it was a thing that helped. We talked about kind of the situation Matt's put in throughout this season.
Yeah.
It's a weird situation.
Dude, training against takedowns with no hands like that is one of the best things that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not disrespectful. Like, as a matter of fact, you get to relying on your hands, like, you're probably going to get dumped.
Yeah.
Like, I push the head is a very last. I'm like, dude, if I needed to use my hand on your head, you wouldn't have my legs right now.
Yeah,
I would have warded this off, like, before you got deep on a shot.
Yeah.
I'll say that Hickson seminar is where I learned how to sprawl as, like, a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He was like, if you don't do it this way, they can still do this.
Yeah.
And if you don't do this detail, they can do that. And like he was just talking about being able to lift sideways and drive back. And he's like, like a lot of people stop driving back, but then you can turn them.
Yeah. Suck that leg through and
yeah. But man, he broke it down on like a whole other level that I wasn't doing it that way. And like the way that Matt Hamill is doing it is the way that I do it now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a super high level wrestler.
Like my sprawl was fine until you got in deep.
Yeah.
If you got my legs, I wasn't going to get out. And like Hickson's like, we could still get out.
Yeah.
And like, but Matt Hamill was doing that. They were like starting in on shots, and like that's how wrestlers practice. They start with a double loaded sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I go.
Yeah. Now defend it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that was I just remember that from the training. But yeah, I mean, I really always liked Matt Hamill, and he ends up on Tito's team.
This season had some, I think. So if you look, they do the first 3 seasons in a span of like 18 months, and I think in this season you kind of see they're kind of, I won't say scraping the bottom of the barrel, but they're getting into some guys that don't have a lot of experience, are very, very one-dimensional, and can't really, like they bring in Ross Poynton from England to fight, but he's 4-6 coming in, so he doesn't even have a winning record.
Yeah.
Which, granted, he does all of his fights at that point at 205, and he drops to middleweight. So, I mean, they kind of give him a deal there, but they bring in a guy like a Mike Stein, who's 3-0, never really had much, MMA fights. Tate Fletcher, who one of Joe Rogan's best friends, but again, very one-dimensional kind of guy. The Christian Rothamel guy, which I don't know what his record is, honestly. I couldn't tell you because on the thing it talks about him having over 40 fights and all that stuff, but everything I could see, he's had like 6.
Yeah.
Danny Abadi, 1-0 guy, kickboxing guy, never really had an MMA fight. Haynes and Herman both come from Team Quest, which is the same spot as Corey and Lieb and Randy Couture's team, so they're both pretty reputable guys. But then you get another guy kind of like Koscheck, Jesse Forbes, 2-0, really outstanding wrestler, but not much MMA experience. We get to Noah Inhofer, who comes in, who had just lost to Mike Nichols, was another guy that's on the show. They had just fought in recently. Solomon Hutcherson is a 6-3 guy. Mike Nichols, again, 3-1 guy. Singer's an 8-5 guy who actually got picked up while they were filming for the season 1 finale at Forrest Griffin's gym in Athens, is where they found Rory Singer, and they decided they wanted to put him on this 3rd season of The Ultimate Fighter. So while they were there filming like all the training shots of Forrest Griffin, they discovered Rory Singer.
Interesting.
Decided they wanted to bring him in for a season. Which he had beaten Wilson Govea. He had fought Dennis Hallman. So, I mean, he had some pretty, good wins on his record. Then you get into a guy like Caleb Starnes, who was 6-0 coming out of Canada, had beaten Jason McDonald, who's another guy that would make it to the UFC eventually.
That was his last fight on the show. Pretty wild.
Caleb's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would really like to see the medical report, too, though. Because I'm like, did you really?
Yeah, did you? Sure. And then you got Kendall Grove. Tall, lanky Hawaiian, 6'6" kid. Team Dagger, yeah, coming from Hawaii. I found this. I don't know why I found this, but I thought it was interesting. One of his fights, he's coming into the show, he was 7-3 with 1 no contest. His 1 no contest was a fight. He went to Tijuana to fight a guy, and the guy shot a double leg takedown, and the ring broke, and they flew out of the ring into the crowd.
Yeah. I did read about that.
That was his one no contest on his record. And then we talked about Matt Hamill, who again was 2-0 coming in, not much experience, but very good wrestler. And then Michael Bisping, the other Brit that comes across, who was 10-0.
Used to be a DJ.
He used to slaughter cows too.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Damn. But Bisping came in as a 10-0 guy, but he came in from Britain, and the real knock on him was that he had not fought very good competition. Even though he was 10-0, he hadn't fought really anybody that great. So a very like kind of ragtag group of guys that were kind of all over the spectrum in this season.
Yeah. It was. But too, several of these guys, like, let's see, what did I do? Well, fewer standouts overall, but like Bisping, Kendall Grove, Ed Herman, and Matt Hamill are definitely guys that were standouts that had incredible careers. Let's see here. So, in the very first episode, Caleb Starnes fights.
Yep.
Against Mike Stein, wins in the first round.
The crazy thing about Stein was that he came from the Tiger Schuleman gym. That was kind of the crazy thing I found about him. So guys like Lyman Good, Uriah Hall, Jimmy Rivera, guys that you know, long time, same gym as Mike Stein. So he was kind of like their first kind of guy that made it to the UFC was Mike Stein. So even though he didn't really do anything there, he ended up kind of paving the way maybe a little bit for those other guys to make it. But you look at a guy like Uriah Hall and Jimmy Rivera, they're both contenders in the UFC right now, and they train the same place that Mike Stein came from.
Yeah,
which I thought was a pretty interesting deal. I was Dana has to have a sit down talk with Ken and Tito here before they start to tell them to play nice, basically for the entire season.
Yeah. That was and that comes out a couple of times.
Yeah.
That was the Pool Shark episode was super funny.
I know, I cracked up that one.
Yeah.
So at this point too, we talk about this being the most heated rivalry between Shamrock and Ortiz, but also another kind of side note is the Ortiz-Dana rivalry, because these two have also had a lot of issues in the past coming into this.
And you, I don't know, did you see that come out any in the show?
No, they talked about it a little bit in the beginning.
Yeah.
Honestly, throughout the season, Ortiz really does a good job of keeping himself in check. Ken is really the one that instigates most of the issues between them throughout, which I was kind of surprised about.
I was, because like I knew all of that stuff that you're talking about had happened, like when I was watching those UFC 50s and all that stuff, right? Like that was some of the earliest MMA drama I got in on, and then but like I didn't because like how Tito was acting, I was like, well, this has to be at the same time, like around the same time. But he said he did a pretty good job of being on his best behavior and kind of keeping himself in check. They go through the same basically kind of evaluation process we see from season 1. They split them into weight classes. They both take them off and have them do all kinds of different stuff. Ken has them do some weird like strongman competition where they got to lift the sandbags. Put them up there.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's a weird deal, but
everybody was pissed about training and being on that team.
We could kind of talk about how his season goes. It's kind of a weird deal. The big surprise out of this whole situation is the Ed Herman. So Ed basically kind of slacks off and takes it easy through this evaluation process because he just assumes that Ken and Tito know who he is because he comes from a big team and he's got a big record. And they really don't. They really don't. They really
fucks with him like the whole show.
Yeah. Well, Tito misses. Tito doesn't realize who he is, and so Tito doesn't pick him. He ends up on Ken's team, and then later Tito realizes, man, that's probably the best guy on the entire show, and I didn't pick him because I wasn't paying attention. And he talks about how he slacked off in the evaluation. He didn't really try that hard, so that becomes an ongoing drama throughout the whole season.
Yeah.
But
he ends up on Shamrock's team.
Yeah.
So,
but you talked about it. Caleb ends up getting to pick Mike Stein to fight. They end up having a coin toss. So that's the way they decide this year. They're going to do a coin toss. Whoever wins the coin toss gets to pick the first fight, and then whoever wins the fight keeps control throughout the whole season. So that's their new way of doing it. So instead of challenges, we're just flipping a coin right now, and then whoever wins the fight gets to pick. So the Shamrock wins the coin toss. They decide to have Caleb fight Mike, which is probably the smartest fight they could have. Caleb's their best wrestler. Mike Stein has zero wrestling. He actually pulls guard when Caleb tries to take him down, and so Caleb beats him up and ends up, I'm pretty sure he TKOs him.
Yeah. Episode 2.
Yeah. Ken's pumped that he gets to keep the hammer, as he says over and over again throughout the entire season.
Yeah. What else? What else happened in season 2? You get Inhofer fighting Forbes.
Yeah, Ross and Bisping kind of have a little bit of an argument. Yeah, whatever. Matt thinks that they're from New England. This is a part about Matt being deaf.
Oh,
so
yeah.
as they're arguing and fighting, Matt's like, I never knew New England was this controversial. And so they have to explain to Matt that they're from England and not New England.
That's funny. Be like, yes, they have a Puritan background. He's a Quaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the first time we see Matt really struggle with being deaf in the house, that he doesn't even understand where these guys are from or what's going on.
Yeah, it is wild how much negative interaction other people are having about. It's weird.
It's a strange situation to be in.
And like, because you can tell, like, anytime like he realizes that they're pissed, he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
Yeah, he's like, "What did I do? What happened?" Yeah, you know.
Like, yeah.
And so again, Ken wins the fight, so he gets to pick. So he decides to put Jesse against Noah, his best wrestler against Noah.
Yeah, yeah. Man, Hamill's wrestling is so sick. Like,
Dude,
him like showing people stuff, like, and he doesn't really like. Remember that one episode? I think it was around this time. He's like, I don't know if I should show you.
Yeah,
They're
the
like,
Kendall and Caleb thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're asking him, and he's like, I don't want to know 50 ways. I want to know one.
Yeah, he's like, just show me one way.
But the way he showed, I was like, damn, that's a good way.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. This is really, and right from the beginning, we get to kind of see the favoritism that's shown towards Matt by Tito and some of the coaches, and it is very upsetting to the rest of the team, which I think is again kind of a thing that works against Matt. Now he's deaf, so he has a hard time communicating, and now all this favoritism is kind of making everybody else resent him even more.
Yeah, and I mean, what's wild is that Matt goes on and fights Tito.
He does, later in his career.
Yeah.
They have this is the basketball episode. So Saul gives Noah a basketball. Noah has a hard time keeping his hands up, so he gives him this basketball to hold and keep up with. Well, all the guys in the house decide to kick it around and take it from him. So there's a lot of arguing about this basketball.
Yeah.
But this is the very first time that we see Ken. So we're at episode 2. So I mean, I would guesstimate we're maybe a week into this. Ken decides to give his guys 2 practices off because he thinks they're overtrained. In a matter of a week, he thinks he's overtrained them and they need some time off. So he gives them a couple practices off, which is kind of tells you what you need to know right from the beginning.
Dude, yeah, that's the theme too throughout. And it's like, like there's even on days that I wouldn't physically do stuff.
Yeah.
Or I would take a light physical day and I would do more mental work. Like I would do drill charts or mind maps or watch fights or something.
Yeah. So immediately after these 2 days off, Ken then yells at his guys for not training hard enough when they come back, which causes a whole other argument. It's Then there's the Noah's ankle incident. So Noah's supposed to fight Jesse. The night before, they have Noah doing drills at the gym, wrestling drills, and he rolls his ankle, which, again, most of the red team is pretty crazy to think that Noah's doing anything when he has to fight in less than 12 hours. But
yeah, for real.
He ends up going and getting checked out. Ends up being not a big deal. They tape it up real good, and he ends up being fine. And then we talk about Jesse's amazing wrestling, that he takes Noah down over and over again until he gets submitted.
First round armbar.
Which, again, brings us back to the coaches, how Team Green complains that they have no jiu-jitsu coach on their team. They have Roman, who's a boxing coach, and Dan Freeman, who's a bodybuilder. So they talk about their great wrestler, how he could have benefited from having a jiu-jitsu coach over the last couple weeks. Possibly could have avoided getting submitted like that.
Yeah, I mean, and then you got Dean Lister across
on the other
way.
side. Yeah,
like how could they not do better than that?
Yeah. So then we go to episode 3, basically like we talked about, and then Jesse's being one inexperienced, only having 2 fights, and then not having really any jiu-jitsu coach gets him beat. The green team starts to become concerned with their easy schedule, about how they're not training hard enough and how Tito's guys are working a lot harder than they are, which again caused more fights.
Plus you have a mole now with Team Dagger.
That's right, Team Dagger. That's right. Solomon and Kendall formed Team Dagger within their
Solomon's
teams.
no front tooth.
Correct. His hilarious, dude. Everything about Solomon. Solomon was probably my favorite guy in this whole season. Funny. He was hilarious.
In their whole Team Dagger gimmick was it was funny.
It was funny. It was a pretty good deal. It was a good comic. It was a good comical part of the season.
Yeah. And Grove, man, I like Grove. First Darce choke in the UFC, choked Alan Belcher unconscious.
Mm-hmm. That dude was legit when he was back in the day. He was a good fighter.
Yeah.
And being 6'6" is a crazy deal for a middleweight.
You know what's crazy is I think it was somebody he fought was 6'3" and had the same reach as him.
Oh yeah,
And I was like, damn.
that's great. That's a Jon Jones situation right there.
Yeah. One of our guys that's coach wrestling, he's a heavyweight, All-American. I mean, he's older now, but he is 6'6", but his wingspan's 6'10".
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a wild deal.
It is.
So then we see, this is kind of the episode where Tito really starts to realize that he should have picked Ed, and he didn't. So he decides he's going to mess with him. So he likes to stare at Ed during the picks and then pick somebody else to fight over and over again.
This is where that starts.
Yeah, and so he ends up picking Kendall to fight Ross, which again, we talk about smart fights. Ross is pretty much a brawler, and Kendall's 6'6", and Ross is 5'8". So
yeah, and Grove takes him out.
oh yeah, pretty quick and easy. Pretty easy fight for Kendall. We see a little bit of Ross's personality through here. But yeah, he ends up getting beat pretty quick, pretty easy by Kendall. Moves on to the next round.
Yeah. Next episode is when Bisping fights first, for the first time since in the house, which he goes on to win the whole thing this season.
This is where we kind of start seeing Matt going really hard with his guys, and the guys getting upset and annoyed that he's kind of going too rough with them, even though he has the interpreter. So they're still very frustrated with him. This is Bisping's episode 2, where he goes on his drunken frustration rampage about how he flew all the way from England and he's getting not treated fairly and all that stuff. So
yeah, he really does get put out by Matt. Like, remember when they're clinch sparring later on in the season, and he just they keep getting into it.
Yeah, they just butt heads throughout the whole time.
Yeah, wild. This is the episode where he fights Rothermel.
Yeah, Christian Rothermel. Yeah, so they bring him in to fight him, and it's a one-sided, another one-sided beating.
Well, and Christian later on, and then who else? Fletcher.
Yeah,
both turned down.
To be in the semis.
I'm just not feeling it, man.
Yeah.
Like, what? That's wild. That is that blew my mind. It blew Dana White's mind too.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But Bisping dispatches him, no problem.
Yeah. Catches kick and knocks him out with the right hand.
That guy had a wild story, losing all his stuff. And
he was a New Orleans Katrina survivor. Yeah.
Wow. And I want to say maybe his dad died in Katrina.
I think he lost his dad in Katrina. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a crazy wild. He was also the guy that was singing the poetry and smoking cigars. He was just he was kind of a weird dude, but
yeah. Anything else happen in episode 4?
Not.
5 is when Herman gets upset about Couture's announcement of retirement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they get to watch the UFC. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is also the time where Ken doesn't show up for a practice. I guess he's sick, so they end up having Caleb Starnes run the entire Team Shamrock practice because Dan Freeman and Roman Pollock can't. They don't know how to run an MMA practice, so there's that issue.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is that fight in this episode where Solomon gets his block knocked off with a head kick.
Yep.
And then he's
after all that trash talk.
They're like, hey, dude,